Chapter 984. India's body turned into a ray of light and returned to his seat. After being in a daze for a while, the big man actually started to cry. This nightmarish experience would probably follow him for the rest of his life. The sky-splitting Tiger King, this bad friend of his, didn't dare to stay by his side and had already slipped away. Who knew how India had offended Dong Shuahan to be killed like this? He couldn't stay in such a troublesome place for too long, in case Dong Shuahan misunderstood that he and India were jackals of the same tribe. Not only the sky-splitting Tiger King, but everyone in the audience ignored India. India did not know what was wrong with him. He had never seen Dong Shuahan before, so it was impossible for him to offend him. Moreover, he was just being polite and not disrespectful at all. How did he end up like this? He wanted to find someone to talk to, but everyone kept their distance from him and treated him like a plague. This made him feel miserable. At this moment, someone opposite him looked at him sympathetically. India could clearly feel the sympathy and kindness from the gazes of the crowd. He raised his head and saw that Lin Jun was looking at him. Seeing that India sensed something, Lin Jun gestured him to cheer up. It was as if a warm current of spring had entered his heart, and India felt much better. This was the first time he felt that the martial artists on the ground weren't all bad people. So there were really kind-hearted people in this world. Han Xian, who temporarily replaced Snow White, was also stunned for a long time before announcing Dong Shuahan's victory, and the second round of the competition began. The second group started the second round. The first round was between Yi Xingcai and Sky Peck. Yi Xingcai was the second place of the ground race, while Sky Peck challenged the 10th place of the ground race and won. He was also a newcomer in the top 10. This battle didn't have much suspense in the eyes of others. When the battle started, everyone was still in low spirits. They hadn't recovered from the shock of seeing Dong Shuahan kill India. That battle was too exciting and shocking. Everyone was certain that Dong Shuahan was someone they couldn't afford to offend. Otherwise, they would definitely die a horrible death. However, the second battle was out of everyone's expectations. Sky Peck's battle prowess was astonishing. Using both spears, he was able to suppress Yi Xingcai. One had to know that Yi Xingcai was ranked second among the races on the ground. No one had expected her to be suppressed by Tian Peck, who had just entered the top 10. Lin Jun narrowed his eyes as he watched Tian Peck's battle. Strictly speaking, Yi Xingcai's strength was definitely above his. At the very least, in terms of astral power, Yi Xingcai surpassed Tian Peck by at least 1 billion. However, Sky Peck relied on his exquisite spear techniques and used his dual spears to perfection. Yi Xingcai couldn't gain the upper hand at all. Sky Peck's spear art was the strongest that Lin Jun had ever seen. If Tian G-Star energy was just a bit higher, he would definitely be able to defeat Yi Xingcai. When Yi Xingcai saw how powerful the Sky Peck was, she no longer underestimated her opponent. She began to fight with caution. She used her powerful astral energy to support herself and waited for the Sky Peck to run out of energy. Yi Xingcai had the advantage in this kind of battle of attrition. Although the Sky Peck was suppressing his opponent, the huge difference in astral power couldn't be made up for. After fighting for a while, the Sky Peck voluntarily gave up. Yi Xingcai, your astral power is indeed strong, but that's all there is to it. When my astral power increases a bit more, you won't be able to keep your second place in the Ground Race Hall of Fame anymore. Yi Xingcai won, but she wasn't happy at all. It wasn't a glorious victory at all. Although the Sky Peck lost, people had seen his glory. Some people even named the Sky Peck Spear God. After this battle, the third group's battle began. Just like the previous two groups, the first battle was between Sin, who was ranked second among the Endless Races, and the Sky Patroller of the Endless Races. Everyone had seen the Sky Patroller's strength. He defeated by Yunyan and stayed in the top 10. This person was also very strong. However, the battle between him and Sin wasn't as exciting as the one between Yi Xingcai and the Sky Peck. Although the Sky Patroller tried his best to deal with Sin, the huge difference in strength between the two couldn't be made up for. The battle lasted for 10 minutes before the Sky Patroller gave up. Of course, this was under the condition that Sin didn't go all out. Otherwise, the Sky Patroller might have lasted for a shorter time. Both sides were from the same race, so it was normal that Sin didn't go all out. After all, it was rare to see someone like Dong Xuahan who was ruthless to everyone. After this battle, it was time for the fourth group's battle to begin. The first battle was between the surface races number 1, Xiong and Lin Jun. There was no suspense in this battle. Xiong was the number 1 among the surface race, and even Dong Xuahan wasn't convinced. Although Lin Jun was a dark horse, no one would believe that he could cause trouble for Xiong. Lin Jun's performance was even more unexpected. He actually gave up the first battle. Lin Jun didn't care about the uproar in the crowd. He knew his own strength. If he were to fight Xiong head-on, he wouldn't have a chance of winning. If he used all his trump cards, he might not be able to win. Rather than that, he might as well keep his trump cards and use them when he needed them. Lin Jun was well aware of the principle that steel should be used on the blade. Lin Jun gave up, and the first battle of the 4 groups ended. Dong Xuahan, Yixing Tsai, Sin, and Xiong each received 1 point. The 4 who lost had no points. After a short break, the second round began. It was still the first group. The first battle was between Anloki and Dragon King. Anloki was ranked 4th among the surface race, while Dragon King was ranked 7th. There was a possibility of an upset in this battle, but the chances weren't high. Dragon King was a mutated king of the dragon race. He was very talented, but Anloki wasn't bad either. His parents were gods, so he enjoyed the best resources and techniques. His strength was even higher. The battle lasted for 20 minutes, and Anloki won in the end. Anloki didn't go all out because they were both from the surface race. In his heart, his competitor in this group was Augustine, and the others were negligible. After the first group, the second group was Crane Shadow against Sky Splitting Tiger King. Crane Shadow was ranked 3rd among the surface race, while Sky Splitting Tiger King was ranked 7th among the endless race. The chances of an upset were relatively small. However, this battle was the most intense one since the start of the competition. Battles between the same race usually ended after the winner was decided. Everyone wouldn't go all out, but it was different for the opposing race. Sky-Splitting Tiger King unleashed all of his strength against Crane Shadow, using all of his trump cards. Although Crane Shadow was stronger than his opponent, he had to pay a considerable price to win against the Sky-Splitting Tiger King. He had to use several trump cards that he had prepared for critical moments to deal with the Sky-Splitting Tiger King. He won, but he used up his potential. This was disadvantageous for his future battles. Sky-Splitting Tiger King's actions received the support of the endless race. Even if they couldn't win against the opposing race, they had to try their best to use up their potential to build a solid foundation for their future races. Only then did people realize how wise Lin Jun's surrender was. Thereafter, the second round of the third group began. Edward from the Machinery race from the endless race faced off against Sky Swordsman, who was ranked 9th among the surface race. This battle was different from the previous one. Sky Swordsman didn't attack as crazily as people had imagined. He also stopped at a certain point in his battle with Edward. When he felt that he couldn't win, he would immediately surrender. The 5 people in this group were Heaven's Sin, Edward, Demon King of Chaos, Sky Swordsman, and Sky Patroller. Sky Swordsman admitted that he wasn't a match for Heaven's Sin, but he could win against Sky Patroller. Therefore, he had to choose between Edward and Demon King of Chaos. He strategically gave up on Edward and chose to attack Demon King of Chaos. It seemed like his goal was to fight for the 5th or 6th position. Everyone nodded at Sky Swordsman's choice, feeling that he was right. The second round of the 4th group was between Yama, who was ranked 3rd among the endless race, and Elemental Controller, who was ranked 9th among the endless race. This battle was even simpler. Elemental Controller didn't fight. Instead, he chose to give up. When he gave up, Elemental Controller even pointed at Lin Jun and sneered. "You're not the only one who would strategically give up. I'll completely give up on the battle with the others and attack you with all my might. You're dreaming if you want to advance from the 4th group." Seeing this scene, Lin Jun also felt that something was amiss. It seemed like the 3 people in this group would choose to give up on the battle with each other. They might even deliberately give up on the battle with Xiong. This would ensure that Yama and Red Widow would be able to advance, while he would be completely eliminated. The fourth group, the group of death, was indeed worthy of its name. After the second round ended, the third round began immediately. The first group was Augustine against India. In this round, India went all out. However, it was a pity that after being dealt a blow by Dong Xuahan in the previous round, there was clearly a problem with his confidence. Augustine didn't expend too much effort to win, conserving his strength to a large extent. The second group was Dark Phoenix, who was ranked 5th among the surface race, against Sky Peck, who was ranked 10th among the endless race. Before the match, everyone thought that Dark Phoenix would win. However, after seeing Sky Peck's performance in the previous round, they no longer had such strong confidence. As expected, Sky Peck didn't even use his killer move in the battle with Yi Xingcai. This time, he used it and actually killed Dark Phoenix at the crucial moment, causing the first upset in the battle. After losing this round, Dark Phoenix's situation was bleak. The third group was Demon Incarnate against Sky Patroller. This time, Sky Patroller chose to strategically give up again. He knew that there was no hope for him to advance. He might as well conserve his strength and wait to attack the Sky Swordsman with all his might. This would ensure that Edward and Demon Incarnate would advance. At this stage, almost everyone had determined their strategic goal and was working hard toward it. They didn't hesitate when they should fight, and they gave up when they didn't want to fight. However, in the next round, there would definitely be no going easy. This was because it was Red Widow, who was ranked 5th among the endless race, against Lin Jun, who was ranked 8th among the ground race. Lin Jun had already lost a round. If he wanted to advance, he definitely couldn't lose this round. Chapter 985. Seeing that he was about to go on stage, Lin Jun took 2 deep breaths. He was unlucky and had been assigned to the fourth group. Xiong Jing's position was unshakable, and the 3 people from the endless races were undoubtedly going to attack him. Lin Jun could imagine their strategy. They would ensure that King Yin Luo would qualify and allow Red Widow to enter the fight for the 5th and 6th places. The elemental controller would be cannon fodder to exhaust him. If Lin Jun wanted to qualify, he would have to at least be in the fight for the 5th and 6th places. Then, no matter what, he had to defeat Red Widow. If he could not defeat her, the fight with Augustine would be nothing more than a bubble. The battle began, and Lin Jun went up the stage. According to the usual practice, the person with a lower ranking would go up first, while the person with a higher ranking would go up later. This was also a form of respect for the person with a higher ranking. Lin Jun went up and waited, but Red Widow did not go up for a long time. Red Widow was a lady dressed in blood-colored clothes. Her clothes were tight and wrapped around her voluptuous figure with exquisite curves. She had 2 towering peaks and a plump buttocks. She looked like a living, fragrant meatball. She was indeed worthy of being called a stunner. Her original form was a starry sky net setter. In fact, she was an extremely special spider. With a planet as a fulcrum, she could set up a huge net in a small star system. Red Widow was very strong and had a great reputation in the endless races. However, her reputation did not come from her strength alone. She was seductive and flirtatious. Red Widow's reputation was even above her Hall of Fame status. However, spiders were lascivious by nature, and her actions were understandable. Now that she was about to go on stage, Red Widow did not go up immediately. Instead, she swayed her slender waist and walked to Dong Xuahan's side. Red Widow was very confident in her charm. She believed that as long as she hooked her finger, there would be no man who would not take the bait. However, Red Widow's standards were very high. She would not take a fancy to ordinary men. In her eyes, only truly strong men were her prey. As for Dong Xuahan, there was no doubt that he was a powerful man. Previously, Red Widow had not had the chance to interact with him. Now that she was about to go up the stage and pass by Dong Xuahan, how could she not take the opportunity to perform? Although Dong Xuahan seemed very cold and heartless when he tried to kill India, Red Widow believed that he would only do that to men. If he were to treat women, especially a woman like her who was so delicious that water could drip out of her body, he would definitely be extremely gentle. After making up her mind, she swayed her hips and walked past Dong Shuahan. When she reached Dong Shuahan's side, Red Widow suddenly cried out in pain. Her body tilted, and she fell into Dong Shuahan's arms. In her opinion, Dong Shuahan would definitely not reject such a wonderful thing that came knocking on his door. He would definitely hug her and comfort her. He might even touch her. Feeling pleased with herself, she posed even more coquettishly so that Dong Shuahan could conveniently hug her. However, before she could even touch Dong Shuahan, an invisible force field blocked her. This made things a little awkward. Red Widow maintained her posture of throwing herself at Dong Shuahan and opened her arms towards him. However, she was blocked by an invisible force field. She maintained her posture and paused in midair. Immediately, everyone saw it. Behind her, there was a roar of laughter. Heavenly Sin first scolded her for being a slut. Then, he laughed coldly and said, "Red Widow, you have found the wrong person. You actually want to seduce Lord Dong Shuahan. Lord Dong Shuahan is devoted to martial arts and aspires to become the strongest god. How can he be seduced by you?" Demon King of Confusion laughed mischievously. "If you're looking for me, I, old cow, will definitely not reject you. It's a pity that Lord Dong Shuahan is not interested in an 8-legged fellow like you." Edward from the machinery race let out a laugh that sounded like metal colliding. "Why don't you keep seducing me? I like your type. When you separate your legs on the bed, there will be another pair of legs. When you separate your legs, there will be another pair of legs. Ha ha ha. That feeling will definitely be unparalleled." The ridicule of these indecent bastards from the endless races made Red Widow so embarrassed that she wanted to die. She was annoyed that Dong Shuahan did not know how to flirt, but she could not flare up. If it were an ordinary woman, she would have been able to find a hole in the ground and hide in it. However, Red Widow was an old hand after all. Her skin was thick enough. She let out a cold snort and stood up straight. "You ugly people can continue dreaming. I will not look for any of you. Let me tell you, it is not that I am not charming enough. It is just that Lord Dong Shuahan is one of a kind in the world. Only he can ignore my charm. If it were another man, he would have long become a subject under my skirt." Edward curled his metal lips. "You are all talk and no action. If you're capable, go and seduce one. I will see." Red Widow looked at Dong Shuahan with some dissatisfaction. She sensed the aura from him that kept people away and gave up on the thought of seducing him. Looking around, Red Widow saw Lin Jun in the arena. Red Widow's eyes lit up as she said, "Although this Lin Jun is from the surface race, he is handsome enough. Furthermore, his strength should be quite good. Based on my judgment, this person must be very good in bed. If I can have a good time with him, I can still accept it. Then it will be him." Heavenly Sin and the others looked at Lin Jun, including Dong Shuahan, who was sitting there like an ice sculpture. He looked at Lin Jun, and no one knew what he was thinking. Red Widow puffed out her chest and said to Dong Shuahan, "Lord, be my witness. See how I will make that brat kneel on the ground and lick my feet. To deal with him, I don't even need to make a move." The surrounding temperature dropped again. She had not expected Dong Shuahan to answer, but she had not expected Dong Shuahan to actually answer. "Oh, then I will wait and see. I think you might really succeed. However, you have to promise me that if he is really conquered by your charm, you will bite him to death on the spot. Use your spider talent to suck him dry. Can you do it?" Red Widow was stunned. "Lord, if you can't do it, then die. Scram." Dong Shuahan's cold and emotionless words were filled with a strong sense of disgust. Red Widow's face immediately turned pale. Although she had failed to seduce Dong Shuahan, she had not sensed that Dong Shuahan disliked her very much based on her womanly senses. However, she did not know why, but she could feel that Dong Shuahan's disgust came from the bottom of her heart. Although she did not know why, this feeling was definitely not wrong. Red Widow did not dare to be long-winded with Dong Shuahan. She hurriedly bowed to Dong Shuahan and then turned to enter the arena. During the process of entering the arena, Red Widow was still analyzing the situation. She reckoned that Lord Dong Shuahan also hated Lin Jun. Otherwise, she would not have asked her to use the cruelest method to get rid of him. However, based on her womanly intuition, she felt that this was not the case. However, she did not have any clues and could not analyze what was going on. Since this was the case, she could only follow Dong Shuahan's request and seduce Lin Jun first. If she succeeded, she would just suck him dry. However, she had to be gentler. When the challenge ended, Red Widow really wanted to try having a good time with Lin Jun. Looking at the woman in front of him, who had a coquettish gaze, Lin Jun frowned slightly. This woman exuded the word coquettish from head to toe. Although she was quite pretty, Lin Jun was now sober. How could he be captivated by her beauty? Moreover, Lin Jun believed that he had seen all kinds of unrivaled beauties. Red Widow's level was not enough to cause any ripples in his heart. However, Red Widow did not seem to be aware of this. After entering the arena, she sized up Lin Jun. Her coquettish eyes revealed a satisfied expression. Then, she raised her chin slightly and revealed a charming smile. "Little brother, come over to elder sister's side." Lin Jun stood still and did not move. He wanted to see what other tricks this woman had up her sleeves. When Red Widow saw that Lin Jun did not move, she giggled and started to circle Lin Jun. She walked in circles and commented on Lin Jun as if she was sizing up goods. "This TSK, this height, this bone structure, this handsome face. It must be especially strong when it's flushed. Lin Jun, why don't you join our endless race? Elder sister will accompany you every day. The two of us will be together forever and never be separated." As she spoke, Red Widow's feminine charms were fully displayed. When she smiled, her buttocks and breasts rippled. An obscure scent also gradually spread out. This was her ultimate move, the ultimate move to seduce men. As long as they smelled her scent, it would arouse the desire of men. Coupled with her own conditions, there were very few men who would not fall for her trick. Even if the other party was a god, Red Widow had some confidence in succeeding. Of course, Lin Jun also sensed this scent. A smile appeared on his face. "Is that all? Hee hee. Then what else do you want me to do? When we are in bed, I will be at your mercy. Isn't that good? I guarantee that as long as you are with me, you will definitely discard all the women you had in the past." Lin Jun's eyes narrowed slightly. His face was a little red, as if he had already fallen for a trick. On the side of the ground race, Xiong Jing could not help but stand up. He shouted at Lin Jun, "Lin Jun, be careful. This Red Widow's bewitching aura has reached perfection. You must not fall for her trick. Otherwise, you will not even know how you lost. If you want to find a woman, wait until the battle is over. I will help you find one. This woman is a pink skeleton. You must not touch her." Bai Yunyan also shouted from below. The others were discussing animatedly. They were all worried about Lin Jun. However, they were not familiar with Lin Jun. At this moment, they could only be anxious but could not say anything. On the side of the endless race, Heavenly Sin and the others revealed expressions of admiration. "This Red Widow is really the nemesis of men. Lin Jun, this rookie is finished. Hee. Isn't it because he does not have enough willpower? He was hooked by a woman's beckoning. Lin Jun is only SOSO. In the arena, Lin Jun's eyes revealed a confused look. He slowly walked towards Red Widow and stretched out his hand. His target seemed to be her towering chest. Red Widow revealed a hint of pride in her eyes. This kind of thing was too easy for her. She had done it many times and could do it easily. Everyone held their breaths, waiting for the moment when the bewitched Lin Jun would be attacked by Red Widow. Heavenly Sin sat in the front row. As he watched, he suddenly shivered. Chapter 986. Lin Jun stretched out his hand very slowly. Red Widow looked very pleased. She was waiting for Lin Jun to take the bait. The 10 fingers on her hands behind her back were as sharp as hooks. When Lin Jun was in front of her, she would launch a fatal attack. All of this happened very slowly. On the screen of the dimensional universe, the expressions of both of them were clearly displayed. The people from the races on the ground were perturbed. They hated Lin Jun for being so disappointing and being bewitched so easily. Meanwhile, some experts from the endless races were clear about how great the temptation of Red Widow was. Lin Jun's only chance was to go all out from the moment Red Widow stepped onto the arena. Since Red Widow had made the first move, Lin Jun was finished. The air was a little stagnant. The distance between the two of them was shortened. Lin Jun was in front of Red Widow. There was a sudden change. Lin Jun's eyes, which were originally intoxicated, suddenly lit up. His outstretched hand clenched into a fist and punched Red Widow's abdomen fiercely. Starfall. A ball of dazzling starlight bloomed in the arena. Red Widow, who was caught off guard, let out a pitiful cry. Her entire body was sent flying by the explosion of this ball of starlight. She flew out of the arena. Lin Jun clenched his fist excitedly. He had won. This battle had been too simple. Lin Jun had not expected it to be so smooth. This was also due to Red Widow being too confident and thinking that her aphrodisiac scent could bewitch him. However, she would definitely not have thought that Lin Jun had a body that was immune to poison. Her scent was also a type of poison. It had no effect on Lin Jun at all. Below the arena, the people from the endless races cried out in surprise. Heavenly Sin and the others waved their fists in frustration. They had not expected Lin Jun to be so cunning. He had actually beaten her at her own game and easily neutralized Red Widow's killing move. This loss was too unexpected. However, Heavenly Sin felt that the cold aura around him seemed to have dissipated at this moment. The originally oppressive atmosphere was swept away. He glanced to the side and saw that Dong Shuahan was still sitting there steadily. This made Heavenly Sin feel a little suspicious. Just as Red Widow's body was about to fly out of the arena, it was as if something was pulling her back in. Red Widow landed on the stage once again. She was no longer as seductive as before. Her abdomen was pitch black, and blood seeped out from the corner of her mouth. Her face was as pale as a sheet of paper. It was obvious that she had suffered serious injuries. Her hands shook, and under the high-powered camera of the dimensional universe, 2 strands of spider silk appeared. It's all thanks to this old lady being extra careful and laying spider webs on the stage in advance that you didn't get your way. Lin Jun, you insulted me. Today I want you to die. Lin Jun also felt a little regretful. Red Widow was indeed cunning. Now that he thought about it, when she had been walking in circles around him, she had not been shooting aimlessly. At that time, she had probably set up an inescapable net of spider webs. However, this was normal. If he wanted to rely on a simple punch to end the battle, it would be an insult to his opponent's Hall of the Exalted title. As for the insult that Red Widow had mentioned, it should be that she had flown into a rage out of humiliation after her charm had failed. Lin Jun's gaze swept across Dong Shuahan's body, intentionally or unintentionally. At this moment, she seemed very calm. He did not know what she was thinking. Clenching his fists, Lin Jun raised his hand and took out his long spear. Red Widow, if you have any abilities, then use them. However, I have to remind you that you should put away those unpresentable methods as soon as possible. Your looks are really unsightly. At the very least, compared to yesterday. Compared to some people, you are still far from them. Red Widow's looks, which she was proud of, had been belittled by Lin Jun. She was even more furious. Lin Jun, I will fight it out with you. Suddenly, Red Widow raised her head and let out an extremely sharp cry. She rose into the air and pounced towards Lin Jun. Her hands shook in the air, and 2 short knives appeared in Red Widow's hands. Xiong Jing, who was from the ground race, shouted, Lin Jun, be careful. That is her spider turtle knife. It is extremely sharp and highly poisonous. Lin Jun held the spear in his hand horizontally. Who cares about her broken knife? Since she wants to die, then bring it on. Pa pa pa. The gold point spear shook out a large ball of spear flowers and met the attack head-on. The 2 balls of energy collided head-on. The blade and spear lights intertwined, bombarded, and tangled together, forming a large domain of death. Before the match, everyone had thought that Lin Jun would not be a match for Red Widow. However, after this exchange, everyone knew how strong Lin Jun was. This kind of head-on collision could best reflect a martial artist's true strength. Although Red Widow's star power was slightly higher than Lin Jun's, Lin Jun's spear techniques, domineering aura, martial techniques, martial intent, and other aspects did not lose to her at all. Using the advantage of the weapon, Lin Jun used the shadowless steps, and his body pulled out a string of afterimages. His spear was invincible, and Red Widow was unable to take even half a step forward. Combined with the tidal martial intent, Lin Jun gradually gained an advantage. Of course, this was due to the long weapon. Similarly, it was also due to Red Widow receiving a stellar fall. However, more importantly, Lin Jun felt that Red Widow did not have an advantage in this kind of head-on battle. She should have other means to be able to occupy the 5th place in the Hall of Fame. Regardless of what means the other party had, Lin Jun was not going to let her off after gaining the upper hand. He fully displayed the advantage of the spear. Lin Jun knew very well that in this kind of battle, whoever used their trump card first would be at a disadvantage. He wanted to use Red Widow's trump card as soon as possible and in the battle as soon as possible. This was because he still had 2 tough battles to fight. At this moment, Red Widow realized that the man in front of her did not care about her looks at all. His attacks were ruthless and did not care that she was a woman. The attacks that surpassed the speed of light caused her to sweat profusely and cut a sorry figure. The injury to her abdomen had affected her performance. She had to admit that in a head-on battle, even if she was in perfect condition, she would not be a match for Lin Jun. However, Red Widow's advantage had never been in a head-on battle. She still had other means. Clang, 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 clang. After a series of sparks flew in all directions, Red Widow retreated in a sorry state. Lin Jun took advantage of the situation to launch a surprise attack. It seemed like he wanted to end the battle in one fell swoop. Red Widow drew her saber and retreated. Lin Jun, I'm not done with you. She quickly moved around the arena, as if she wanted to engage in guerrilla warfare with Lin Jun. Lin Jun laughed and stepped on the thundercloud to rise into the sky. You are still far from being able to engage in guerrilla warfare in front of me. The thundercloud moved quickly in the air, moving left and right at an extremely fast speed. The light from Lin Jun's spear was like a heavenly river hanging upside down as he chased after Red Widow. Red Widow ran for a while before she suddenly turned her head back. Lin Jun, if you push others too far, you'll be seeking your own death. Die. Bang. A white light enveloped the entire arena, and a huge net rose from the ground of the arena. The expressions of many people watching changed. This was Red Widow's famous technique, red brocade heavenly net. Bright red blood flowed on the layers of spider silk. It was said that the blood came from the people that Red Widow had consumed. Too many people had died, forming such a vicious net. Lin Jun was giving chase on a thundercloud when he saw this huge net enveloping over. Before the huge net got close, countless resentful spirits howled from it. They covered the sky and charged at Lin Jun's spiritual sea. The divine infant curled up in Lin Jun's spiritual sea. It protected its spirit and chi to prevent these resentful spirits from affecting its mind. The peak azure mental energy was sufficient to protect Lin Jun from being harmed by the resentful spirits. Lin Jun brandished the spear in his hand, wanting to break the net. However, every time he rushed to the front of the net to attack, it was abnormally tough. No matter how much strength Lin Jun used, he could not break it. This won't do. The spear's strength is not enough to break the net. I have to use a sword technique. There was a clear hum, and a sword appeared. With the sword in hand, Lin Jun immediately executed a sword technique. A beam of sword chi shot out and tore a hole in the huge net. However, Xiao Chun was still unable to break out. Behind the huge net, Red Widow stood in the air. As she laughed loudly, she revealed a section of her snow-white abdomen. Threads shot out from her belly button and rapidly formed new huge nets. They moved forward dauntlessly and enveloped Lin Jun. Ha ha! Lin Jun, just accept your fate. My red brocade, heavenly net, can even envelop a small star system. No matter how strong your sword technique is, can you break through a star system? Those who do not have this strength can only struggle in the net forever. They will never be able to break out. Lin Jun roared angrily, dream on. No matter how strong your net is, can it not be afraid of fire? I am a god-tier alchemist. No one can compare to me in controlling flames. I will burn your broken net now." As he spoke, a ball of bright azure flames rose from Lin Jun's palm. He threw it at the net. The bright azure flames were very domineering. However, when they landed on the net, they only burned a small flame. They did not spread. "Ha ha! Do you think my net will be afraid of flames? All these years, in order to resist the flames, I have put in so much effort. If my net can be burned up by a single flame, the red brocade heavenly net would not have supported me to become one of the top 5 in the endless races." Lin Jun stopped struggling. As Red Widow spoke, she revealed a ruthless expression. She had to take back all the humiliation that Lin Jun had given her. She exerted force with both hands, and the threads on her belly button flew out quickly. The red brocade heavenly net shrunk rapidly and quickly enveloped Lin Jun. Although Lin Jun's sword technique was sharp, it was obvious that he was powerless against the red brocade heavenly net that came from all directions. As he struggled with all his might, he was still wrapped into a cocoon. Seeing that the cocoon was still struggling with all its might, Red Widow was a little worried. She used all her strength to throw layers of spider silk over, wrapping the cocoon until it was bigger than a house. At this moment, Red Widow heaved a sigh of relief. It was impossible for Lin Jun to break free in a short period of time. She stretched out her hands, and cracking sounds could be heard from her body. Red Widow had turned into a huge red spider. Human-faced red spider. With a light leap, she jumped onto the top of the cocoon. The beautiful face turned and faced Dong Xiuhan. Red Widow revealed a flattering smile. "Lord Dong Xiuhan, I will now follow your instructions and suck this Lin Jun dry." Chapter 987. Red Widow had transformed into a spider. This pipe-like object could suck up all the bodily fluids of a person. When Lin Jun was trapped, everyone thought that Lin Jun was finished. There seemed to be a layer of frost condensing around Dong Xiuhan, causing Heavenly Sin, who was the closest to her, to retreat far away. As the second person in the Endless Race Hall of Fame, Heavenly Sin had extremely keen insight. He felt that Dong Xiuhan was abnormally concerned about this battle. Furthermore, he felt that Dong Xiuhan's emotions were fluctuating, as if she had a conflicted mentality. It felt as if she did not know who to support. Heavenly Sin could not explain the situation. Red Widow could not think of this. She followed her original plan and inserted the pipe-like object into the cocoon. Just when she thought that everything was foolproof, the situation changed drastically. This silkworm-like object suddenly swelled up. Hiss! After a high-pitched roar, a giant beast emerged from the cocoon. Lin Jun's black hole beast had transformed. The galaxy appeared from there, and within its bloody mouth was a spiraling black hole. The silkworm-like cocoon had turned into countless threads that were easily swallowed by Lin Jun. "Oh no, I forgot about this guy's black hole beast transformation." Red Widow was shocked. She realized that she had made a fatal mistake. When facing off against Lin Jun, she must not give him the chance to use his transformation. Wrapping Lin Jun in the silkworm-like cocoon would certainly give her an advantage, but would also give Lin Jun a chance to transform and counterattack. She even suspected that Lin Jun had deliberately allowed himself to be wrapped up so that he could counterattack. Within the vision of Lin Jun's black hole beast, everything could be swallowed. Although this was a dimensional universe and the distant shadows were not included, nothing in the arena could escape. After the black hole beast transformation, as long as one star power did not exceed twice that of Lin Jun's, they would not be able to escape this devouring. Lin Jun had 5 billion star power. If he wanted to escape from the black hole beast devouring, he would need more than 10 billion star power. Other than Old Man Kan Jing and the Yuan Sage Venerables on the rostrum, no one else's star power could exceed this value. Even Dong Xiuhan's was the same. This was Lin Jun's strongest trump card. As long as one gave him a chance, one could only wait for death to descend. Red Widow let out a shrill cry. Under the encompassing of the black hole's deathly ripples, Red Widow was disintegrated into neutrons and turned into dust that could not be any smaller. Then, the dust turned into a stream of light, and when she appeared again, she was already below the arena. Looking at the mighty black hole beast in the arena with a pale face, Red Widow's hands were trembling. And, Lord Dong Xuan, I'm very sorry. I made some mistakes, Red Widow stammered as she apologized in front of Dong Xuan. She had just boasted in front of Dong Xuan. Now that she had been defeated, she was very nervous and embarrassed. She thought that Dong Xuan would be furious and scold her. Red Widow tried her best to make herself appear more charming and pitiful. She hoped that Dong Xuan would spare her on account of her beauty. However, Dong Xuan's reaction was beyond her expectations. Your performance is still all right, but you don't have to apologize to me. I have nothing to do with you. Also, put away your pretentious attitude. It makes me feel disgusted. Red Widow's expression turned even uglier. She did not dare to say anything and retreated. She did not understand why her invincible charm technique had failed again today. Red Widow had been defeated. This had greatly exceeded everyone's expectations. This could be considered a dark horse. After Lin Jun won this match, there was a high chance that he would be able to enter the fight for the 5th or 6th place. In the 5th group, Xiong Jing would definitely advance. Yanluo Wang had a higher chance of getting the 2nd place. Lin Jun only needed to defeat the element controller, and he would be able to secure the 3rd place. The 3rd round ended. In Lin Jun's group, Xiong Jing, Yanluo Wang, and Lin Jun each had 1 point. Then, the 4th round of the competition started immediately. The first group of this round was Dong Xuan against the Giant Dragon King. This was a battle without any suspense. After the Giant Dragon King entered the arena, he was even a little worried that Dong Xuan would kill him like how she had killed India. After all, she could even kill someone of the same race, let alone someone of the opposite race. Therefore, the Giant Dragon King only hoped that the match would end as soon as possible so that he could appear manly. However, Dong Xuan did not kill him like in the previous match. Instead, she helped the Giant Dragon King. She used Void Imprisonment to bind the Giant Dragon King and threw him out of the arena. Although it was very embarrassing, it was much better than the previous match. The Giant Dragon King could accept it. The second group was Yi Xingcai against the Sky-Splitting Tiger King. Initially, Yi Xingcai had a hard time fighting against Sky Peck the previous time. Many people suspected that Yi Xingcai did not live up to her reputation and might even lose to the Sky-Splitting Tiger King. However, no one expected Yi Xingcai to show her prowess this time. She easily defeated the Sky-Splitting Tiger King and defended her reputation. Of course, the Sky-Splitting Tiger King had used up all his trump cards in order to kill Crane Shadow. At the same time, it also proved how powerful Sky Peck was. The third group was Sin against Sky Swordsman. Sky Swordsman also gave his all in the battle. Unfortunately, his strength was still far from Sin's. In the end, he did not gain any advantage even after using up all his bullets and was defeated by Sin. Sky Swordsman was actually more unlucky than Lin Jun. The other people in this group were all from the Endless Races. Every one of them would attack him. He had no chance of advancing. It was just that he was not as famous as Lin Jun. Therefore, not many people cared about him. After that, it was the 4th group's match. This time, it was Xiong Jing against the Element Master. As expected, the Element Master immediately admitted defeat and stopped fighting. His goal was very clear. He wanted to save all his strength to attack Lin Jun. This made Xiong Jing, who wanted to help Lin Jun weaken his opponent, helpless. The 4th round passed just like that. The situation of the advancement gradually became clearer. Then it was the 5th round. The 5th round was even faster. Due to the current situation, the order of the battles was adjusted so that the first ranked person could end their battle as soon as possible. This would make the later stages clearer. Therefore, the 5th round was still the battle between the first ranked person in each group. The first group was Dong Xuan against Augustine. The second group was Yi Xingcai against Dark Phoenix. The third group was Sin against Demon King of Chaos. The 4th group was Xiong Jing against Red Widow. These 4 battles were even simpler. Augustine directly admitted defeat because he did not have the strength to fight against Dong Xuehan. Therefore, he saved his strength for the next battle. Yi Xingcai and Dark Phoenix were on the same side. Dark Phoenix admitted defeat. Demon King of Chaos also admitted defeat to Sin of Chaos. The fourth group's Red Widow tried to confuse Xiong but failed again. She was defeated by Xiong in a few moves. Once again, she was humiliated. The sixth round was the final battle between the first-ranked person in each group. Dong Xuehan against Enroche, Yi Xingcai against Crane Shadow, Sin of Chaos against Edward, and Xiong against Yama. Among these four battles, the first and fourth groups were actually very interesting. Because the second and third groups were all from the same race, it was unlikely that they would go all out. Only the first and fourth groups were from different races. It was unlikely that they would go easy on them. Enroche was fourth among the races on the ground, and Dong Xuehan was first among the endless races. If the fourth group defeated the first group, it was not unacceptable. In this battle, Enroche did go all out. However, the result was not suspenseful at all. Dong Xuehan had a huge advantage in the battle and could not resist at all. Enroche's efforts were also very tragic. It felt like he was smashing an egg against a rock. In the second group, Crane Shadow admitted defeat. Actually, he had the strength to fight with Yi Xingcai. However, he chose to give up this time to consider the overall situation. The third group was the same. Edward did not fight to the death with Sin of Chaos. The two of them exchanged blows symbolically. Without using their trump cards, Edward did not appear to be very passive. He also displayed his powerful strength before admitting defeat peacefully. The results of the fourth group, which everyone was looking forward to the most, were the same. Yama Wang also admitted defeat. However, everyone did not think that Yama Wang did not have the strength to fight with Xiong. They were relatively calm, and their goal was very clear. They wanted to eliminate Lin Jun, especially when Lin Jun defeated Red Widow. After the sixth round, the first place in each group was born. They were Dong Xuehan, Yi Xingcai, Sin of Chaos, and Xiong. After the second place in each group was born, these 8 people would fight for the top 4 of the two races. Although the first place was born relatively quickly, no one thought that the competition would end so easily. There was no suspense for the first place in each group. However, there was a lot of suspense for the second place. Now, no one dared to say that they were guaranteed to get second place. For example, Yama Wang in the fourth group. Even if Red Widow admitted defeat to him, he would still have to defeat Lin Jun to get second place. Next was the seventh round. The first group was Augustine against the Giant Dragon King. The second group was Dark Phoenix against the Sky Splitting Tiger King. The third group was Demon King of Chaos against the Sky Swordsman. The fourth group was Red Widow against the Elemental Controller. In the first group, Lin Jun especially hoped that the Giant Dragon King would be able to defeat Augustine. At the very least, he would be able to create some trouble for Augustine. However, Lin Jun neglected one point. After losing to Dong Xuehan and Anluo Qi consecutively, the Giant Dragon King seemed to have lost confidence in qualifying. His battle with Augustine did not last long. Seeing that he could not defeat Augustine, he actually chose to admit defeat. This meant that he had automatically withdrawn from the ranks of the top 6. After 3 consecutive defeats, he no longer had a chance. After that, Dark Phoenix defeated the Sky Splitting Tiger King and retained the hope of qualifying. The Demon King of Chaos defeated the Sky Swordsman once again and eliminated him completely. In the match between Red Widow and the Elemental Controller admitted defeat once again. He even told Lin Jun clearly that he had the ability to defeat Red Widow. However, he did not want to fight. He wanted to defeat Lin Jun. Moreover, such an opportunity would appear very soon. It was because the 8th round of the battle between the two parties was a battle of rookies. A 4th-grade contestant against a 5th-grade contestant. The Giant Dragon King against India. The Sky Splitting Tiger King against Sky Peck. The Sky Swordsman against Sky Patroller. The Elemental Controller against Lin Jun. Chapter 988. Lin Jun calculated his own situation. Currently, he had fought 2 matches and there were 2 more. The third match was about to begin. He had admitted defeat against Xiong and won against Red Widow. If he defeated Elemental Controller, he would be guaranteed the third place in the group. However, Lin Jin knew that this battle would not be easy. Elemental Controller had admitted defeat 3 times in a row in order to attack him. He would use all his strength in this battle. To Lin Jun, this was a battle that he could not give up on. If he lost this battle, he would have to defeat Yinluo Wang with all his strength to advance. That would be too difficult. The first group's battle began. The Giant Dragon King versus India. This was an unimportant battle. Both of them had no hope of making it to the next round. Moreover, they belonged to different camps. Hence, there was nothing to worry about in this battle. They might as well give it their all. India's elusive jiu-jitsu was fully displayed in this battle. It caused a lot of trouble for Giant Dragon King. In the end, Giant Dragon King used the Giant Dragon transformation that he had never used before. Only then did he win by luck. However, it was a Pyrrhic victory. There was nothing to be proud of. The second group was Sky-Splitting Tiger King versus Sky Peck. This battle was also worth paying attention to, especially Sky Peck. After defeating Dark Phoenix with 1 win and 1 loss, he had a high chance of appearing. He was also a dark horse. However, Sky-Splitting Tiger King did not seem to want to go easy on Sky Peck. As one of the top rankers, he felt that Sky Peck should go easy on him. There seemed to be some conflict between the two of them. In the end, this battle between the same race evolved into a true slaughter. However, Sky-Splitting Tiger King did not expect that he would still lose to Sky Peck, even when he went all out. First, he defeated Dark Phoenix, the 5th place of the ground race. Then, he defeated Sky-Splitting Tiger King, the 7th place of the endless race. Sky Peck had fully proven his strength to the 2 races. After winning 2 battles, Sky Peck had already secured a spot in the 6th place. After winning, Sky Peck raised his spears and roared to the sky, intimidating the entire audience. The third group's battle was between Sky Swordsman and Sky Patroller. These 2 people were not worth watching because they did not have the chance to enter the top 6. The Sky Sword Artist had no chance at all, and the Sky Patrol had a very slim chance as well. After the battle, the Sky Patroller won by a narrow margin. This was also due to the fact that the Sky Swordsman had fought too fiercely and used up all his trump cards. Otherwise, it would have been difficult for him to win. However, it didn't matter whether they won or not. Both of them would be at the bottom. The fourth group's battle was the one that attracted the most attention. It was Lin Jun versus the Elemental Lord. The Elemental Master was also considered an oddity. After conceding 3 consecutive matches, although he had completely lost all hope of advancing, he still preserved all his strength. This was their plan, to attack Lin Jun with all their might. The Elemental Master was undoubtedly a powerful cannon fodder, and there was even a possibility that he could knock Lin Jun off his horse. Both sides were ready to take the stage. Everyone was paying attention to this battle, which would determine the situation of the fourth group. Heavenly Sin waved his hand, and King Yama came to his side. King Yama was from the royal family of the ghost race. He wore a black robe and had a sinister and terrifying face, just like the Grim Reaper of Hell. He was a super expert ranked 3rd among the countless races. Coming to Heavenly Sin's side, King Yama said, "Lord Heavenly Sin, is there anything I can help you with? What do you think of the situation of the fourth group?" King Yama pondered for a moment. Lin Jun might be qualified to fight for the 5th and 6th place. Do you think that the Elemental Lord won't be able to snipe him? It's very difficult. To be honest, we have carefully studied Lin Jun. Actually, I place my greatest hope on the Red Widow. The Red Widow's aphrodisiac fog is the greatest trump card against men, and it is also the most likely to succeed. However, I didn't expect this move to be ineffective against Lin Jun. This has disrupted our plan. Heavenly Sin also sighed softly. This is indeed unexpected. From what I know, the Red Widow's fog isn't that simple. This kind of fog isn't completely a poison, but it goes straight to the central nervous system of a person and stimulates the hormones that are difficult to do. Unless one star power far surpasses the Red Widow's, for example, Lord Dong Shuahan or Xiong. However, how did Lin Jun do it? That's right. This kind of smell that stimulates hormones is very destructive, especially for people who have been abstinent for a long time. They definitely won't be able to control themselves after being stimulated like this. Unless this person has experienced an extremely intense release before, only then will they not be affected. Could it be that Lin Jun went out to look for a woman the night before? King Yama chuckled as he said this. It can't be that coincidental, right? Lin Jun shouldn't be the kind of person who can't do without a woman. Martial artists usually don't move for years and years. Could it be that it's such a coincidence? Hearing King Yama's heartless words, Heavenly Sin was suddenly stunned. He thought of the news he heard last night. It was about the army of the countless races moving out to capture Lin Jun. This matter? Heavenly Sin glanced at the rostrum, and a very absurd idea quietly appeared in his heart. Although this idea was very vague and seemed inconceivable, Heavenly Sin decided to secretly investigate it. Although Heavenly Sin and King Yama did not think that the element controller would be able to snipe Lin Jun, the element controller was full of confidence. He had admitted defeat for 3 consecutive rounds, which made people look down on him. He had been holding back his anger and wanted to prove himself at the most crucial moment. It was not that he did not have the strength. He was only forced to do this because of the tactical requirements of the countless races. If he really wanted to make a move, King Yama did not dare to say anything. However, he did not think that Lin Jun and the Red Widow were his opponents. It was enough to defeat Lin Jun in this round to clear his name. He did not care too much about the ranking. He was waiting for the Heavenly Fire Great Battle. At that time, the Hall of the Exalted Strength would be reshuffled, and that would be the time for him to rise. The match began, and the element controller was the first to appear. From the seats of the Hall of the Exalted of the countless races, the element controller walked up to the arena step by step. In the first footprint, a piece of metal appeared out of thin air. In the second footprint, a wooden stake rose from the ground. In the third footprint, there was a ripple in the water. When the foot stepped down, ripples appeared in the void. In the fourth footprint, there was a ball of flame. Under the fifth footprint, a rock appeared. Then, he stepped on a gust of wind to send him on his way. Electricity lingered under his feet. Along the way, the element controller showed everyone his ability to control all kinds of spells. This move alone caused an uproar. Their previous judgment of his strength was completely subverted. Heavenly Sin and King Yama's eyes lit up. King Yama said unconsciously, "This is too unexpected. I did not have much hope for him, but now it seems that he might really give us a surprise. Let's hope that's the case. This Lin Jun might be a very annoying person." After having this idea in his mind, Heavenly Sin's hatred for Lin Jun had reached a considerable height. This was because Heavenly Sin was from the Emperor clan and was the younger brother of the Ju Tian Emperor. If things were really as he thought, then it would be a big deal. Seeing the element controller on the stage, Lin Jun did not delay, but chose to go on stage immediately. Without showing off like the elements, Lin Jun directly stepped on a thundercloud and went on stage. His speed was very fast. In the rumbling thunderstorm, although it was not as fancy as the elements, its momentum was astonishing. The element controller watched Lin Jun go on stage and gently stroked the magic staff in his hand. This was a rather special supreme treasure. It was a walking stick, and there was a huge gem embedded on it. This was the Heavenly Mother Gem. It was not a gem in the ordinary sense, but a special gem formed from an entire gem mineral planet after countless purifications and refinements and concentration compression. A gem could store magic energy that could cover an asteroid system. This was a priceless treasure. The gem emitted a sun-like flash. The element controller looked at Lin Jun coldly. "Lin Jun, you have been arrogant enough in this challenge. Now it's time for you to pay your debt." Lin Jun stepped on a thundercloud and slowly descended, facing the element controller, who was stepping on a gust of wind. "With just your material, maybe you are still lacking a little. Hee. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Today, I will let you know what kind of terrifying effect is produced when mental strength and magic are cultivated to the extreme. I have not found a suitable test subject for those methods of mine. Today, you came at the right time. Be at ease and be my sparring partner." divine might of destiny. In people's minds, magic required a certain amount of time. However, no one expected the element controller to make a move in an instant. And the first move was not magic, but a strengthened mental strength attack, divine might of destiny. The element controller was at the peak of God's stone. To be able to use divine might of destiny at this stage showed how strong his mental strength was. Among the top 10 of the two races, there were only a few who could use divine might of destiny. He was one of them. With the release of divine might of destiny, he used this attack to restrain Lin Jun. At the same time, a huge amount of elemental energy began to surge in the air. His second attack was about to come. However, reality exceeded his expectations. His divine might heavens was actually blocked. The two mental strengths collided in the air, and the aftermath caused the space to collapse. This is impossible. Only divine might of destiny can directly resist divine might of destiny. You are actually proficient in this move. Lin Jun coldly snorted from his nostrils. When fighting with someone, know yourself and your enemy to be undefeated. If you don't even know this, how are you going to fight me? Die. The sword in his hand soared into the sky. Lin Jun straightened his body and charged forward. Chapter 989. Lin Jun's sudden attack caught the element master off guard. This also made him realize that this battle would not be as simple as he had imagined. Lin Jun fully understood the advantages and disadvantages of fighting with his opponent. In a battle, the element master had to try his best to keep a certain distance from his opponent so that he could use his magic. However, Lin Jun did not intend to give him such an opportunity. After the clash of heaven's will and heaven's will, he immediately closed in on the element master. The sword in his hand was entangled in close combat, and the electric sword energy enveloped the element master. The battle entered a white-hot state from the beginning. In order to avoid such a situation, the element master blasted out his most powerful magic again and again. He almost did not need any time to prepare. He raised his hand and cast a powerful magic that could shatter asteroids. Lin Jun did not want to be separated from him. Elements also rose from his body. It should be known that the element master was not the only one who was proficient in all elements. Lin Jun was also proficient in all elements. Although Lin Jun did not have any deep understanding of magic, his resistance to elements was very strong. Some elements were even ineffective against him. For example, fire, light, thunder, ice, and so on. They were almost useless against Lin Jun. The lethality of other magic was also reduced by a lot. In addition, Lin Jun's shadowless steps made it difficult for the element master to lock on to his position. Lin Jun's sword was constantly threatening his opponent's life. The continuous invisible heart swords left a string of wounds on his body. The element master could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. This battle was too unfair for him. His strength was greatly suppressed. He could not cast powerful magic, and the lethality of simple magic was limited. If this continued, he would definitely die under Lin Jun's sword in less than 3 minutes. Seeing that the situation was not good, the element master had to show his trump card in advance. Lin Jun, do you think you can win? Let me tell you, you are still far from it. Great 5 Elements Reincarnation Flower. Following the element master's roar, a huge 5-colored flower bloomed on top of his head. The 5 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth rose from his body and gathered on the flower. The flower petals opened up layer by layer, forming a protective layer. When Lin Jun attacked with his sword, there would be layers of elemental protection. Amidst the dull thuds, Lin Jun's sword techniques could no longer deal any damage to the elemental controller. What a powerful turtle shell! Lin Jun couldn't help but sigh in admiration. But then he said, "But don't think that you are invincible just because you have this tortoise shell. With the power of the 5 elements used for defense, do you still have the ability to attack? When I break the protection of your 5 elements reincarnation flower, let's see how you're going to survive." Lin Jun's star power surged as he unleashed his sword art to his heart's content, quickly weakening the element controller's power. Sensing Lin Jun's strength, the elemental lord's expression turned cold. Lin Jun, do you think I can't fight back just because I only have defensive means? If it were that simple, I wouldn't be worthy of being called the elemental lord. The 5 elements reincarnation flower will temporarily protect my safety. Now, I'll let you have a taste of the conflict between light and darkness. Light and darkness is one. The elemental lord threw up his magic staff to support the operation of the 5 elements reincarnation flower. At this moment, he put his palms together. One of his palms was shining brightly, while the other was sinking into darkness. After putting his palms together, light and darkness actually merged into one between his palms, forming a black and white energy wall that coexisted with light and darkness. Just like how water and fire could not coexist, light and darkness, these two completely different powers actually gathered together to form an unbelievably powerful energy body. Lin Jun could clearly feel the huge destructive power of the light and darkness fusion in front of the elemental lord. Just like his black hole devourer, the elemental lord's 5 elements reincarnation flower and light and darkness fusion was his strongest trump card. With this kind of strength, if the elemental lord wanted to fight someone head-on, as long as it wasn't at the level of Dong Xuehan or Xiong Jing, he might really be defeated. However, Lin Jun definitely wouldn't allow this to happen. He had to stop the elemental lord from using this light and darkness fusion move. Otherwise, he would be eliminated. Lin Jun did not have many trump cards left. His doppelganger had been destroyed, and he had used one of the destructive holy thunders. Now, his strongest trump card was his remaining 2 destructive holy thunders. The destructive ions were the king of speed, but their power was slightly inferior. It might not be able to destroy the elemental lord's 5 elements reincarnation flower in one blow. Only the destructive atomic thunder, which combined the speed of ions and the power of photons, was suitable to be used in this battle. Now, Lin Jun couldn't care less. Only by winning this battle could he have a future. Otherwise, if he was eliminated, he wouldn't be able to surpass Augustine. With a thought, the destructive atomic thunder made its move. A brilliant light pierced through the sky and appeared in Lin Jun's hands. The longsword was also put away. Lin Jun's hands controlled the thunder, and he stepped on the thunder clouds and soared into the sky. When this thunder appeared, at least half of the people in the field stood up. Almost every expert could clearly feel the powerful destructive power contained in Lin Jun's thunder. Not good. He's going to use his ultimate move. Be careful. You can't take this attack head-on. It's over, it's over. The elemental lord's light and darkness fusion is still too slow. It can't compare to Lin Jun's attack speed. Under the cloak, Dong Xuehan looked at Lin Jun with a pair of beautiful eyes. Her big eyes were full of splendor. How many secrets did Lin Jun have that had not been unearthed? No one knew, but for the first time, Dong Xuehan felt that this person wasn't as simple as he looked on the surface. Such a young, god-level alchemist with such powerful combat strength. This person was really the hope and future of the human race. Under the suffocating atmosphere, Lin Jun's destructive atomic thunder blasted down. The space shook at this moment. Even the invisible barrier between the arena and the audience began to tremble violently at this moment. Electric light shot out everywhere, dazzling everyone's eyes. Thunder and lightning roared down. The power that could split the sky and earth fiercely bombarded the elemental lord's great 5 elements reincarnation flower. The elemental lord's move had a short stalemate. At this moment, all the star power in his body erupted and burned directly to the limit. But all this was not enough to resist the destructive atomic thunder. The moment the two forces collided, the elemental lord spat out a mouthful of blood on his chest. The star power flowed back, the elements withered, and the 5 elements flower withered. From a moment the flower bloomed to the moment it withered, it was only a moment. The light and dark combination that did not have time to be released did not have the chance to be released again. Even without the attack of the destructive atomic thunder, the huge energy flowed back was enough to make the elemental lord explode and die. But Lin Jun did not give him such a chance. The destructive atomic thunder continued to bombard him fiercely. A huge mushroom cloud rose in the arena, like an atomic bomb exploding. The energy flow hit the barrier and then returned, forming a dazzling star-like light. The light continued to shine for about a minute, and the arena shook for about a minute before the light gradually dissipated. The virtual arena had returned to its original state. Lin Jun withdrew his hand in the center of the light, turned around, and walked down the arena. At this time, people noticed that the elemental lord had stepped down first. He did not step down by himself, but was completely vaporized by the destructive atomic thunder and eliminated. The elemental lord looked at Lin Jun's departing figure with a pale face, his body trembling. He wanted to point at Lin Jun and say something, but he trembled and couldn't say anything. The power of the atomic god thunder just now had destroyed his confidence, but now it was gone. Only King Yama walked behind the elemental lord and patted him on the shoulder. Don't worry about anything. You have done very well. Lin Jun's move is definitely his strongest killing move, but you forced it out in advance. Then in the following battle, Lin Jun will not be able to release such a move again. The elemental lord turned around and finally felt a little better. King Yama, when the heavenly flame war begins, I will let these scum of the surface races and Lin Jun fully understand my power. Looking at the elemental lord's red eyes, King Yama did not doubt the authenticity of his words. If it was a large-scale attack to kill people, even King Yama was not as good as the elemental lord. The power of this guy's magic was too amazing. If he was given a certain distance, there were not many people who could be his opponent. I believe you. Don't be anxious. We will definitely win this challenge. The day of the Heavenly Flame War is definitely not far away. Yes, I believe that it will not be long before Princess Snow White announces the start of the next Heavenly Flame War. At that time, I will let these people know how powerful I am. The Elemental Lord secretly made up his mind. He would wait until the next time to have a showdown with Lin Jun. Lin Jun won. This was a good thing. After defeating Red Widow and the Elemental Lord consecutively, Lin Jun's points had reached 2 points. Lin Jun did not dare to say that he would be in the top 2 of this group, but he was already firmly seated in the 3rd place. This meant that Lin Jun could at least get the 6th or even 5th place among the surface races. For a martial artist who was previously ranked 98th, this was definitely a miracle. The surface races cheered. Lin Jun could be said to be the biggest dark horse in this challenge. He had brought them too many surprises. However, there were also some people who were unhappy with Lin Jun's advancement. That was Augustine. After the 8th round ended, Augustine and Lin Jun both had 2 points. He still had one more battle to fight, which was the 4th place among the surface races on the law. If he lost, then Augustine and Lin Jun would meet in the 5th or 6th round. Augustine did not want to lose to Lin Jun. However, after seeing Lin Jun's performance just now, Augustine was a little shaken about defeating Lin Jun. If Lin Jun could still release that kind of lightning, then he would not be able to block it. How could he avoid a direct confrontation with Lin Jun? Chapter 990. In this challenge, each group would have to fight a total of 10 rounds. Currently, 8 rounds have been completed and there were only 2 more rounds left. Each group would have 2 rounds. The second group would fight against the third group, and the second group would fight against the 5th group. In the first group, Enroche was ranked 4th among the surface races. He had already finished 2 rounds, losing to Dong Xuehan and winning against the Giant Dragon King. However, Enloki wasn't worried about his qualification. He still had 2 matches left, one against Augustine and the other against India. Enloki wouldn't have any problems with India. As for Augustine, Enloki believed that he would be able to defeat him. In his opinion, Augustine's strength was slightly inferior to his. He should be smart enough to admit defeat so that he would not run out of bullets and still not be able to qualify. However, something unexpected happened. As soon as Augustine and Enroche started fighting, the first move Augustine used was his trump card, 8 Split Whirlwind Blade. This was a move that pushed one's body to its limits. Every stack slash would prevent one from using the saber technique for a year. With Augustine's current physical strength, he would only be able to use it again after 8 years. And Roche had underestimated his opponent too much. He had thought that Augustine would be satisfied with his current strength. Moreover, the two of them had a good relationship. Augustine had even hinted that he would admit defeat. This had caused Roche to fall into a trap. Roche was heavily injured by the 8-split whirlwind blade and lost his combat ability. Augustine, you're despicable. I'm sorry, brother Roche. The ranking in the Hall of the Exalted is very important to me. As for what happened today, I will definitely compensate you in the future. But today, give up your position. The blade flashed from all directions again. Roche was completely eliminated. Roche had lost to Augustine. Even if he could defeat India in the end, he would only get 2 points. He was no longer in the top 4. The best result for him was to fight for the 5th place. This was the first second group contestant to be eliminated between the 2 major races. It was also the first major upset. As for Augustine, he became the 5th person from the Hall of the Exalted to qualify directly after Dong Xuehan, Yixing Tsai, Heavenly Sin, and Xiangjing. Many people had not expected such a situation. Everyone had seen the situation on the stage clearly. For a moment, many people criticized Augustine's actions, believing that he had used his acquaintance to deceive Anlua Qi. But since Augustine dared to do this, he wasn't afraid of others gossiping. After defeating Anlua, his situation had improved a lot. Although he had used his strongest killing move, 8-split revolving blade, he had entered the top 4 because of it. Didn't Lin Jun want to compete with him? Then let Lin Jun defeat the 3rd Yama King of the Endless Race. King Yin Luo and Lin Jun were of opposing races. There was no such thing as going easy on him. It was impossible for Lin Jun to be as lucky as him. With Augustine's advancement, the 9th round of the competition continued. In the second group, Crane Shadow appeared and defeated Dark Phoenix. He also had 2 points. As long as he defeated Sky Peck, he would definitely qualify directly. Dark Phoenix didn't use much strength and gave up on this match to preserve Crane Shadow's strength. Then the 3rd group began. Edward defeated Demon King of Chaos. Another victory was imminent. The 4th group was still uneventful. Red Widow automatically admitted defeat again, allowing King Yin Luo to win without a fight. King Yin Luo's strength was preserved so that he could deal with Lin Jun. After the 9th round, there was only one last match left in the entire challenge. Lin Jun sat there, knowing that things had reached the edge of a cliff. To be able to compete for the 5th and 6th place, Lin Jun was considered a success in the eyes of others. However, Lin Jun knew that if he couldn't win the last match, everything he had done before would be meaningless. If he couldn't enter the top 4, even if he lost to Augustine, he wouldn't be able to save his son, Linen. This time, he had painstakingly traveled all the way to Sky Flame City to participate in the challenge. However, to defeat King Yin Luo was easier said than done. King Yin Luo was the king of the Ghost Race, one of the top 3 endless races. In the entire Hall of Fame of the 2 races, King Yin Luo was also one of the top 5 existences. If he still had the divine thunder of destruction, Lin Jun would still have some confidence. However, now, it could only be said that things weren't looking good for him. However, Lin Jun had no other choice. He had to take this step. After the 9th round, the last round of battles finally began. First, it was the first group's battle. Roche against India. After Roche lost a match, he couldn't afford to lose this one. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to hold on to the 5th and 6th place. Roche went all out to eliminate India with his anger towards Augustine. Finally, he managed to save some face. At this point, everyone thought that this was the end of the group stage and that there wouldn't be any more surprises. However, there was a sudden change in the second round. The battle between Sky Peck and Crane Shadow was the most exciting battle since the start of the competition. Crane Shadow's true form was a giant crane, while Sky Peck was also a bird. Crane Shadow was the 3rd place of the ground race, while Sky Peck was the dark horse expert of the endless races. The battle between the two was simply earth-shattering. Almost everyone used up their last bullet. In the end, they actually perished together on the stage. A dramatic change in the ending. According to the analysis of the dimensional universe, Sky Peck stopped breathing 0.1 seconds later than Crane Shadow. Therefore, the system determined that Sky Peck won. Crane Shadow and Enroche were the same. They were both second-tier contestants and were squeezed out of the top 4. However, Enroche had fallen into a trap, while Crane Shadow had truly met a strong opponent. Sky Peck's performance could be said to have stunned the two races. His exquisite marksmanship could even make up for his lack of astral power, allowing him to challenge one powerful opponent after another. To be able to defeat the top 3 of the ground race with his marksmanship was undoubtedly a miracle. The endless races also erupted into unprecedented cheers, celebrating the fact that another expert of theirs had made it to the top 4. If there were no accidents, the endless races would once again fight for the top 4. This was a great victory that belonged to them. After that, Crane Shadow hammered the ground in frustration. However, he had to admit that Sky Peck had risen to power. The third match was between Edward and Sky Patroller. This was also a battle without any suspense. Sky Patroller put up a token resistance and surrendered his gun, which was considered to have completed his mission. At this point, the situation of the qualifiers was basically clear. In the first group, Dong Xiuhan and Augustine obtained the right to qualify directly. Enroche obtained the right to fight for the 5th place. In the second group, Yi Xingcai and Sky Peck obtained the right to qualify directly. Crane Shadow obtained the right to fight for the 5th place. In the third group, Edward and Heavenly Sin obtained the right to qualify directly. Demon King of Chaos obtained the right to fight for the 5th place. In the fourth group, Xiangjing obtained the right to qualify directly. The second to qualify was between Yinluo Wang and Lin Jun. The winner would qualify, while the loser would fight for the 5th place. The final match was between Lin Jun and Yinluo Wang. This would be the final battle that would determine the winner of both sides. However, almost no one was optimistic about Lin Jun's chances. Lin Jun's battles along the way didn't stop at all. The groupings weren't good to begin with. Be it Red Widow or Elemental Controller, both of them had caused quite a bit of trouble for Lin Jun. Even Moro from before had exhausted Lin Jun's trump card. On the other hand, Yinluo Wang's journey was smooth sailing. He didn't encounter any resistance and had retained all of his strength. Even if the two of them were under the same conditions, everyone believed that Yinluo Wang would obtain victory, let alone under such conditions. The races on the ground didn't even have the energy to cheer for Lin Jun. They were silent as they watched Lin Jun go up the stage to participate in his final battle. Lin Jun walked up the stage and looked down. He looked at everyone, and everyone looked back at him. At this moment, Lin Jun felt as if he could see through everyone's inner world and see their thoughts. On the ground side, Xiangjing frowned slightly. Clearly, he wasn't optimistic about Lin Jun's chances in this battle. Yi Xingcai's expression was also solemn. In this year's challenge, there were many experts. It would be very difficult for her to maintain the second place of the ground side. On the other hand, Augustine, who had already advanced to the next stage, had an ambiguous smile on his face. In his opinion, Lin Jun no longer had a chance. He was now waiting to see Lin Jun make a fool of himself. On the side of the endless races, Sin, Edward, and the others were smiling. They were very optimistic about the outcome of the battle. This time, the dark horse, Sky Peck, had a strong fighting spirit on his face. He really hoped to have another battle with Lin Jun. Sky Peck was very unhappy that Lin Jun had passed the previous battle by a fluke. After defeating Crane Shadow, Sky Peck was also bursting with confidence. He had the feeling of a brave and fearless warrior. When Lin Jun's gaze swept past Dong Xiuhan, the white cloak moved back slightly. Under the little fox mask, the pair of bright eyes looked at him with a complicated expression. Lin Jun winked at Dong Xiuhan. Dong Xiuhan wasn't the only one who saw this scene. The rest of the endless races also saw it. This bastard, how dare he provoke Lord Dong Xiuhan? King Yinluo, don't hold back when you get on stage. Tear this kid into pieces. He really doesn't know his place. I really want to teach him a lesson personally." As they spoke, they all looked at Dong Shuahan, thinking that she might say a few words. However, they didn't expect Dong Shuahan to turn her head slightly and not look at Lin Jun or them. Her reaction was a little strange. Sin was not far away, deep in thought. The others didn't think so much. King Yinluo immediately went on stage. He was wearing the black python robe of the Ghost Race King. His tall body was close to 3 meters. His hands were behind his back as he went on stage. He looked like an unshakable mountain. When he went on stage, the whole place quietened down. King Yinluo raised his hand, and a 5-meter-long death scythe appeared in his hand. High-grade cardinal treasure. Chapter 991. King Yama walked in front of Lin Jun. His tall body was like a god looking down on all living things as he lowered his head to look at Lin Jun. "Lin Jun, if I were you, I would admit defeat now. It is enough to obtain the qualifications to fight for 5th place. If you don't have enough strength, you will only bring shame to yourself if you think about a position that doesn't belong to you." Lin Jun took out his sword. "There are some things that you will never know if you don't try." "Hee hee, what a joke. Do you think you have the qualifications to challenge me? In this arena, it's impossible for you to even get close to me." King Yama raised the death god scythe and pointed it at Lin Jun. A few clouds of black chi rose from the ground, and a group of vengeful spirits and evil spirits appeared between King Yama and Lin Jun. This is real." Lin Jun was shocked. The ghosts in front of him were real. They were definitely not illusions. Lin Jun had never seen anyone who could summon creatures from the dimensional universe. But this King Yama had done it. Of course it's real. This is the innate ability of our Ghost King clan. "Lin Jun, I'm not lying when I say that you don't have the qualifications to fight with me. Have a taste of being surrounded by 10,000 ghosts. Kill him." King Yama pointed again, and the group of vengeful spirits and evil spirits immediately howled as they pounced towards Lin Jun. The black light on these ghosts condensed, and their auras were powerful. Each of them had the strength of the peak of the God realm. Lin Jun revealed a cold smile. "King Yama, are you looking down on me? You dare to show off a ghost with such strength? You're simply overestimating yourself." Lin Jun stood in place without moving. He didn't even raise the sword in his hand. With a thought, the heart sword was formless. A huge, invisible sword net whizzed out and met the group of ghosts head-on. Whoa! After a clear sound, pieces of flesh appeared on the arena. This group of dozens of ghosts was directly cut into pieces by Lin Jun's heart sword. However, King Yinluo didn't feel any displeasure. It was as if the one who was killed wasn't his ghost. When the flesh and blood fell to the ground, they quickly gathered together and turned into a group of ghosts within the lingering black gas. However, this time, they weren't ordinary ghosts. Instead, they were ghost soldiers with ox heads and horse faces. "Lin Jun, you can easily kill Celestial Realm ghosts. What about these Divine Stone Realm ghosts? Let's see if you can still be so relaxed." These ox-head and horse-face creatures all held small death god scythes in their hands. Each and every one of their blade lights danced, forming a curtain of light that attacked Lin Jun from all directions. Lin Jun's feet began to move. Lin Jun was like a gust of wind, shuttling through the saber light. The long sword in his hand also became a sharp weapon for harvesting lives, easily killing the horseface and ox-head. "King Yinluo, your ghost can't take it anymore. Let's give it a try." Lin Jun increased his speed and instantly knocked down these ox-head and horse-face creatures, pouncing straight towards King Yinluo. If he wanted to win this battle, he had to fight King Yinluo head-on as soon as possible. He didn't want to tangle with the ghosts he summoned. There would never be any hope of winning. When King Yinluo saw Lin Jun pouncing towards him, a black light rose from beneath his feet, and he silently slid backwards. "No, I've said before, you don't have the qualifications to fight with me. You can't do it in the Divine Stone Realm, right? Then let's try a group of demigods." The Death God scythe danced in the air, and a crack appeared in the space. A withered claw grabbed the edge of the crack, and a howl came out. One by one, black and white impermanents with blood dripping from their eyes crawled out with their tongues sticking out. The auras of these ghosts were very powerful. Each of them had the strength of a demigod. They were completely different from the previous two batches. After the black and white impermanents appeared, the wailing staff once again attacked Lin Jun. In Lin Jun's eyes, the demigod-level black and white impermanents were still like clay chickens and pottery dogs. He didn't care about them at all, but he didn't want to tangle with these minions anymore. He wanted to quickly decide the victor between him and King Yinluo. King Yinluo also saw through Lin Jun's intentions, but he didn't do as Lin Jun wished. Black chi shot out one after another, and every black and white impermanence that was killed by Lin Jun immediately stood up and turned into a king-level judge. No matter how tyrannical Lin Jun was, it was impossible for him to kill a king like a chicken. Book of Life and Death, Judge's Pen. More and more judges appeared on the stage. From a few, there were dozens, hundreds, and thousands of them. Lin Jun, if you want to fight with this king, then kill all these judges. I won't hide it from you. This king's ghosts are all undying. There are a total of 100,000 of them. If you can kill them all, then this king will accompany you in a real battle. Huh? At this point, Lin Jun didn't think about anything else. He waved his sword and used the limitless sword technique. Cold, Abyss, Rakshasa. The three sword techniques were connected, forming a cycle of sword energy waves. One by one, the king-level judges rushed over, but they were all killed by Lin Jun's sword one by one. The sword was enchanted with gold, and its power was not inferior to a high-grade treasure. With Lin Jun's current strength, he could easily kill a king. This time, King Yinluo finally became serious. With a slash of the death god's scythe, a crack appeared in space. Another ghost appeared from the crack. With a bright death god scythe and a huge black cloak, this new ghost was actually King Yinluo. Lin Jun couldn't help but squint his eyes. This was a clone. He didn't expect King Yinluo to have a clone. Furthermore, this clone had stellar energy surging around it. It was obvious that this clone was very strong. At the very least, it was stronger than Lin Jun's main body by a little. Ha ha! Lin Jun, since you were so desperate, then this king will grant you your wish. As long as you can defeat my clone and these judges, then you will have the right to challenge me. However, I don't think you will have the chance to do so. The death god's scythe in the clone's hand slashed down at Lin Jun. Under the suppression of countless king-level judges, Lin Jun didn't have any space to dodge. He could only block the attack with his sword. Clang! The heavy impact caused Lin Jun's arm to go numb as he staggered back. The surrounding judges immediately swarmed forward. Although these people weren't strong enough, many ants could bite an elephant to death. Lin Jun really couldn't ignore them. While Lin Jun was hastily waving his sword to fight, the clone approached again. The death god's scythe in his hand brought about black ripples of death. Again and again, it was swift and fierce, making it difficult for Lin Jun to deal with. Lin Jun tried to counterattack many times, but this clone was right in front of him. He couldn't break through it. As the battle progressed, Lin Jun started to get injured. Seeing the situation on the stage, the people below started to discuss. Xiong sighed slightly. This is bad. Lin Jun can't fight King Yinluo head-on. If this continues, he will definitely lose. Yixing Tsai also said that's right. Lin Jun's only chance was to recklessly attack King Yinluo at the beginning, not giving him a chance to use his skills. Now that he has fallen into the enemy's sea of people, it will be too difficult for him to make a comeback. Xiong shook his head slightly. That won't do. King Yinluo's clone is enough to cause huge trouble for Lin Jun. Right now, his main body hasn't joined the battle because he has some misgivings about Lin Jun's lightning. He wants to end the battle without taking any risks. If his main body joined the battle, I think the battle would have already ended. In the end, the difference in strength is too great. Augustine said with a hint of schadenfreude. As long as Lin Jun lost, he would never be able to make a comeback. If he couldn't even save his son, it would definitely harm Lin Jun's cultivation. This was what Augustine wanted to see. On the other hand, the people from the endless race were much more relaxed. Lin Jun had already started to get injured, and King Yin Luo hadn't even made a move from the beginning to the end. The difference in strength between the two was obvious. They cheered and celebrated, waiting for the moment when Lin Jun fell. Dong Xuehan closed her eyes slightly. Lin Jun, bastard, this is the punishment you deserve, but will you be so willing to surrender without putting up a fight? If it ends like this, I will definitely take your mediocre life. You better pull yourself together. Even if you want to die, you can only die in my hands. This is what you owe me. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. His forehead was hit by the death's side's blade energy. Blood dripped from the top of his head, blurring Lin Jun's vision. The avatar of King Yin Luo in front of him definitely had more than 5 billion star energy. Every attack brought about incomparably heavy pressure on Lin Jun. Lin Jun originally thought that King Yin Luo would take this opportunity to kill him, but he didn't expect that this guy would rather slowly torture him to death than be in a hurry to fight. He only released streams of black gas from the back of the team, reviving the dead king-ranked ghosts one by one. Although this method was slow to take effect, it was extremely practical. If this continued, Lin Jun would soon die from exhaustion. No, I have to get rid of King Yinluo's avatar, or I'll lose for sure. At this point in the battle, Lin Jun knew that he had to use his trump card again. If he wanted to clean up these crazy ghosts in front of him, there was only one move left. Lin Jun used the star that was born in the black hole to cast True Starfall. Lin Jun's original plan was to use this move to deal with Augustine. This move was very lethal, and if he used it, he would definitely be able to kill him in one blow. But now he had to use it in advance, otherwise he would be eliminated. After making up his mind, Lin Jun's shadowless steps was pushed to the limit. The shadowless steps that had been cultivated to the 7th level finally showed its might. Shwa 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 shwa. Moving at the speed of light, thousands of afterimages appeared instantly. Relying on his dreamy footwork, Lin Jun finally dodged the attack of King Yinluo's avatar. Although he still couldn't break through the encirclement formed by the countless king-ranked ghosts, the pressure on him was greatly reduced. He leaped into the air, his hands clasped together, and a dazzling golden light exploded from his palms. King Yinluo, don't underestimate me. Now is the time for my counterattack. True. Star Fall. Chapter 992. This star landed on the stage, among the group of ghosts below, and also in the hearts of the audience. It was as if the end of the world was born in the small stage. The huge shock caused the audience to lose their seats. When the dazzling white light completely disappeared, the audience saw a scene of devastation. Countless fragments piled up like a mountain, proving that the scene just now was definitely not an illusion, but a real star that had exploded. The ghosts summoned by King Yinluo were now completely vaporized and disappeared. However, the battle was not over. Lin Jun's body was curled up in a corner of the stage. He had experienced a real star explosion and had a strong understanding of all this. He was able to effectively protect himself when a star exploded. As for King Yinluo's original body, he was curled up in another corner of the stage. Relying on his tyrannical strength and incomparably rich combat experience, King Yinluo immediately realized the power of this move. Therefore, he immediately found the most advantageous position for himself and did his best to block this attack. After using several defensive trump cards, Yamaluo Wang finally survived this move. Although it seemed very embarrassing, King Yinluo knew that to be able to survive a star explosion in such a small space was definitely not something that everyone could do. Even experts like Yi Xingcai and Xiong dared not say that they could survive a star explosion in such a small area. However, King Yinluo also paid a painful price for this. The black robe on his body had been completely torn, revealing his true appearance. There were a few short and thick bone spurs on his head. His green skin looked extremely sinister and terrifying. He was wearing a silver tight armor. The armor was now mottled with black and white from the explosion, but it was not too damaged. This was a peak mid-grade defensive treasure. It was not that easy to damage. Only the Death God's scythe was still shining brightly, without any damage. After coughing twice, King Yinluo spat out a mouthful of blood. Raising his head, King Yinluo stared at Lin Jun and laughed. Lin Jun, I really didn't expect you to have such a killing move. You should have a star in your inner world, right? No. It should just be a small stellar core. Otherwise, I would have already been eliminated. No one can collect a real stellar core in their inner world. Lin Jun didn't answer this question. He didn't need to. The only thing he needed to do now was to fight. This should be your final trump card, right? Right now, I'm very glad of my strategy. Although I lost a clone, it was worth it to force you to use this move ahead of time. King Yinluo stood up from the ruins, shook off the dust on his body, patted his chest twice, and then pulled out the death scythe that was stabbed into the ground. He said to Lin Jun, who was 1,000 meters away, "Didn't you want to fight with me? Today, I will fulfill your wish. Come on." With a wave of the Grim Reaper's scythe, King Yinluo had finally made his move. The seemingly long distance between the two closed in an instant. In the next moment, Lin Jun could already feel the chill of the Grim Reaper's scythe reaching his body. At this time, Lin Jun finally understood the gap between him and King Yinluo. Lin Jun originally wanted to use King Yinluo's sudden advance to launch the last Annihilation Thunder. However, the opponent's speed was unimaginably fast. Lin Jun didn't even have the time to do so and was already in a dangerous situation. Unable to use the Divine Thunder, Lin Jun quickly took a step back with the Shadowless Steps and counterattacked with his sword. A battle of great disparity in strength between the enemy and himself had thus begun. King Yinluo's scythe danced out thousands of blade waves. Every time he attacked, a large amount of light would flash out. The time difference between the first and the last slash was definitely not more than 0.01 seconds. This was faster than the speed of light. Lin Jun was exhausted from dealing with such a fast attack. He tried his best to display his swordsmanship to the limit, but it was to no avail. Deep wounds began to appear on his body, revealing his bones. Ha! Lin Jun, Lin Jun. Today, I will let you know what true strength is. Those petty tricks of yours are not elegant at all. My harvesting blade technique can slash out 99,999 times in a second. In front of my absolute speed, you have no chance at all. Under the layers of blade light, Lin Jun was like a small boat in a storm. He could be capsized by the blade light at any time. Lin Jun knew that he was about to lose his chance. His spear skills weren't as exquisite as King Yinluo's blade skills. Although his sword skills weren't bad, in this kind of close combat, he didn't have any advantage against the Grim Reaper's scythe. A burst of blood soared into the sky. Lin Jun's body was thrown high into the air and fell heavily. His limbs were almost chopped off. Lin Jun fell into the dust amidst the rumbling smoke. Relying on the rapid recovery of the immortal spirit body, Lin Jun barely managed to get up. Before he could get up, King Yinluo's body was already close to the ground as he flew over with a sinister smile on his face. You don't have a chance. Give up. The Grim Reaper's scythe dragged out a cold light, and layers of blade light slashed down once again. The blade light flashed in front of his eyes. This wave of attacks was fatal. Lin Jun finally arrived at a desperate situation. Below the stage, Dong Shuohan clenched her hand slightly. Beside Dong Shuohan, Heavenly Sin suddenly spoke. "My lord, do you think Lin Jun still has a chance?" For the first time, Dong Shuohan answered Heavenly Sin. The chances are slim. If you want to break King Yinluo's harvesting blade technique, then you have to seize the gap between his attacks and interrupt his blade. Only then can you turn defeat into victory. Heavenly Sin nodded. That's right, but Lin Jun doesn't have that kind of strength. If you want to break it, you have to be faster than the opponent. King Yinluo can strike 99,999 times in a second. If Lin Jun wants to break it, he only has a 1 in 100,000 second chance. This is too much for him. I think his path to the top 4 is over. No, he hasn't given up yet. For some reason, Dong Shuohan suddenly said such a sentence. But halfway through, she suddenly stopped. Hee. My lord doesn't seem to hate this kid from the surface race. I never knew that our Lord Dong Shuahan had such a kind heart. She actually went back to admire someone from an enemy race. Heavenly Sin smiled, his tone somewhat gloomy. Dong Shuahan took a deep breath. I just feel that this person's potential is not bad. I'm looking at the problem from the perspective of a pure martial artist. Don't talk nonsense. Is that so? Then let's test my lord's vision. But I think he might disappoint you. After saying that, Heavenly Sin suddenly stood up and shouted at the arena, King Yin Luo, what are you dawdling for? Let's end it. Dong Shuahan didn't say anything, but she didn't refute Heavenly Sin's words either. She silently said in her heart, Bastard, don't embarrass yourself too much. Lin Jun's eyes widened as he looked at the blade light that was about to reach his body. But his mind had already begun to disperse. Inside his dantian, the ethereal divine bell floated. Around the divine bell, time and space seemed to have frozen. That was the power of the law that stopped time. His spiritual force was immersed in the power of the law. He completely ignored his own dangerous situation. The reason why King Yin Luo can strike faster is because he has a deeper understanding of the use of time acceleration. It's not that I don't understand the principles of time acceleration and deceleration. In fact, my understanding is even deeper than his. However, because his star energy far surpasses mine, he is able to form a force field in battle, allowing the speed of his blade technique to stack. My star energy is inferior to his, so even if I form a force field, it will be broken the moment it appears. This is the effect of star energy. Star energy is the foundation of a force field of the same level. My star energy is inferior to his, so I can't even use what I need to use. If you want to break King Yinluo's blade technique, only a higher level of force field can be effective, and that is time stop. As long as I can grasp the power of time stop, even if it's just a tiny bit, as long as I can have a 100,000th of a second chance, I can turn defeat into victory. My talent, my aptitude, I need to comprehend it. If one could analyze Lin Jun's brainwaves at this time, they would be able to discover that his brainwave activity was hundreds of thousands of times greater than that of an ordinary person. This was the power of talent. It was the potential of a person who was stimulated in a desperate situation. Only those with extraordinary talent could be called geniuses. And Lin Jun's current performance was undoubtedly a genius among geniuses. The ethereal divine bell, which was wrapped in his mind power, was forcefully stripped of its faint power. Like a firefly in the darkness, a lighthouse in the storm, Lin Jun felt a trace of light in the pitch-black night. Although he had yet to truly comprehend time stop, he could rely on this momentary flash of inspiration to seize that 100,000th of a second opportunity. That's it. A subtle force field has formed around me. Although it's only a little bit, it's enough. Lin Jun suddenly opened his eyes. King Yinluo's blade light had already arrived. Lin Jun was neither sad nor happy at this moment. His body gently leaned back. The first blade light whistled past his cheek. A strand of hair slid down from the top of Lin Jun's head. The second blade light would arrive within 0.0001 seconds. He could clearly see the viciousness and sinister smile on King Yinluo's face, as well as the determination to kill Lin Jun no matter what. At this moment, the layers of blade light had already stopped in Lin Jun's eyes. There was no speed at all. His body also reacted quickly in the nick of time, standing on his own, drawing his sword, attacking. Wong! Lin Jun forcefully inserted a bolt of lightning into the two blade lights that had almost no gap between them. The same superliminal speed attack went straight for King Yinluo's throat. Chapter 993. What kind of concept was 100,000th of a second? Can you imagine splitting a second into 100,000 parts? Before you could understand how short a period of time it was, he had already passed by you hundreds of thousands of times. In such a short period of time, when most people still thought that King Yama would win, the situation suddenly changed. Lin Jun struck out with lightning speed. In the gap between King Yama's two slashes, he succeeded in one strike. King Yama didn't expect that Lin Jun would be able to seize this 100,000th of a second opportunity. Before he could react, Lin Zhan's sword pierced through his throat. The saber light that was flying in the sky earlier instantly disappeared, and the arena returned to silence. What everyone saw was Lin Zhan piercing his opponent's throat, while King Yama held the scythe of the death god in one hand and Lin Zhan's sword in the other. This scene shocked everyone. Lin Zhan, who seemed to have no ability to resist, was actually able to counterattack. King Yama, who was ranked in the top 3 of the endless races, had encountered an unprecedented challenge. However, people didn't think that Lin Zhan would win. King Yama wouldn't fall so easily. Cough, cough, cough. King Yama coughed a few times, and blood foam flowed out from the corner of his mouth. One of his hands gripped Lin Zhan's sword tightly. Black gas lingered around his hand, blocking the energy that Lin Zhan wanted to push over. He slowly pulled out with one hand. Although Lin Zhan wanted to crush his head, he couldn't do it. King Yama's star power was still so strong. In a competition of absolute strength, Lin Zhan was still at a disadvantage. However, Lin Zhan didn't want to give his opponent a chance to turn the tables. If this attack couldn't deal with his opponent, then who knew how many more unforeseen events would happen later? Lin Zhan wanted to destroy his opponent's potential as much as possible. At this moment, the two of them were close together. It was the perfect opportunity for Lin Zhan to use the Annihilation Thunder. Although Lin Zhan only had one last Annihilation Thunder left, he couldn't hold back. He held the sword in one hand to maintain the pressure on King Yama, while the other hand raised and opened his palm. King Yanluo, try this. The destructive Ion Divine Lightning was a lightning with the fastest speed. At such a distance, Yama King had no chance of dodging. However, he was still ranked 3rd among the endless races. His strength was beyond Lin Zhan's expectations. At the critical moment, the Death God scythe blocked in front of King Yanluo. The divine thunder of destruction fell and blasted the scythe into the sky. However, its power was weakened because of this. The lightning struck Yanluo Wang's chest hard. After being weakened, the lightning shattered the mid-grade supreme treasure armor on Yanluo Wang's chest. Then, it struck Yanluo Wang's body. There was a deep hole in his chest. It was so badly mangled that one could even see his heart. The King of Hell, who had always been incomparably powerful, was unable to hold on after suffering such heavy injuries. With a kacha sound, King Yanluo knelt down on one knee as his body began to tremble uncontrollably. Seeing such a situation, Lin Zhan couldn't give the other party any more chances. He immediately pulled back the sword in his hand and gave King Yanluo another ruthless blow to end this fierce battle. However, Lin Zhan still underestimated his opponent. King Yanluo, who was lucky enough to survive the attack of the Annihilation Thunder, had a thick layer of black gas appear on his body. That was his innate death energy, an ability unique to the Ghost King clan. The black gas quickly healed King Yanluo's wounds, preventing him from dying. Meanwhile, King Yanluo suddenly pulled the sword in Lin Zhan's hand, and the two of them quickly approached each other. Bang! King Yanluo turned into black gas and circled behind Lin Zhan. With a wave of his hand, he grabbed Lin Zhan's neck tightly. Ahaha! As King Yanluo exerted his strength, he lifted Lin Zhan from the ground. Lin Zhan, you brat. You almost killed me with that attack just now, but this king is blessed by the heavens. Your bolt of lightning was still unable to complete its task. If you lose this opportunity, then you will never return. Lin Zhan pulled King Yanluo's arm with both hands. His opponent was 3 meters tall, and his powerful strength made it difficult for Lin Zhan to resist. Waves of dizziness came over. Lin Zhan's body also had many wounds, which were constantly draining his strength. With a move of his mental power, 7 flying swords rose into the air, wanting to attack King Yanluo from behind. However, King Yanluo was already prepared for this. A wave of mental attack fiercely bombarded Lin Zhan's sea of consciousness from behind. Twice, the continuous bombardment came one after another. Both of their mental powers were at the peak of the Sky Saiyan level. This was a battle where both of them would suffer. If the battle dragged on, it would even be advantageous for Lin Zhan. However, it was advantageous for King Yinluo right now. Under the bombardment of his mental power, Lin Jun could only resist. A few flying swords had just risen up when they lost their momentum and fell to the ground. Even his nascent soul did not have the chance to leave his body. Ha ha! Lin Jun, you're finished. This king is going to strangle you alive today. Don't use any of your methods. The sound of bones breaking could be heard. King Yinluo's face revealed a sinister smile. He would definitely win. Suddenly, he felt that his wrist could no longer hold Lin Jun's neck. Black hole beast transformation. At the critical moment, Lin Jun decisively used the black hole beast transformation. His body quickly grew larger, and King Yinluo's originally tall body seemed incomparably small at this moment. However, this was only for an instant. At the same time, King Yinluo's body also rapidly expanded. Lin Jun, don't think that you're the only one who knows how to transform. The size of the body is simply a small trick for the Ghost King clan. Even if you turn into a black hole beast, I can still strangle you to death. Before he could finish his words, a strong force suddenly attacked him from behind, strangling his neck tightly. King Yinluo's pupils dilated. The one who attacked him from behind was actually Lin Jun's treasure-seeking tongue. He had calculated everything, but he had forgotten about the treasure-seeking tongue. Even if he remembered, it would be useless, because at this moment, all his strength was used to deal with Lin Jun. He had no scruples about the sneak attack behind him. The treasure-seeking tongue pulled King Yinluo back. During this time, Lin Jun quickly took a breath of fresh air. The dizziness from before completely disappeared, and he was immediately energized. Suddenly turning around, Lin Jun bit King Yinluo's arm. The black hole beast's huge fangs closed and immediately tore off the arm. Ayaya, open for me. Facing the terrifying mouth of the black hole beast, King Yinluo felt the approach of death for the first time. His entire body's stellar energy erupted to the limit. Even the treasure-seeking tongue at the peak of the god realm couldn't withstand King Yinluo's power and began to break apart inch by inch. But this was enough. The treasure-seeking tongue had bought Lin Jun enough time for him to use the black hole devour. In the mouth of the black hole beast, the black hole spiraled and faced King Yinluo head-on. The ripples of death enveloped him. King Yinluo's huge body twisted a few times and began to shrink rapidly. No, Lin Jun, don't even think about it. My stellar energy, erupt. Lin Jun could clearly feel the strength of King Yinluo's stellar energy. It was definitely above 7 billion, maybe even close to 8 billion. This kind of stellar energy was enough to rank him in the top 5 of the 2 races, or even the top 4. But it was useless now. Lin Jun also had 5 billion stellar energy. Those with less than 10 billion stellar energy would definitely not be able to resist the black hole devour. Under the influence of various objective factors, King Yinluo actually faced the black hole devour head-on. No matter how capable he was, he couldn't escape. The stellar energy resistance only delayed him for less than a minute. Under the devouring of the black hole devour, his stellar energy seemed to have rushed into the sewers, never to return. Once the stellar energy was exhausted, death would descend. The Ghost King race had extremely strong vitality. Their body's recovery was almost as strong as Lin Jun's immortal spirit body. But in the face of the power of the black hole devour, their bodies dissolved into the smallest molecules, unable to recover at all. King Yinluo's body disintegrated under the power of the black hole devour and disappeared without a trace. But Lin Jun didn't retract the black hole devour. He maintained the black hole devour and even increased its strength. This action puzzled many below, but Dong Shuahan, Heavenly Sin, and the rest were shocked. Heavenly Sin's pupil shrank. This guy is really ruthless. He actually knows that King Yinluo can escape his soul into the divine realm. He's not giving King Yinluo any chance. As he said that, he glanced at Dong Shuahan. My lord's vision is indeed unique. This Lin Jun has great potential. He's still in the divine realm, but he's still in the divine realm. It's really unimaginable. Why is my lord so confident in him? Dong Shuahan snorted coldly. How I see a person is my business. Don't you think you're talking too much? Heavenly Sin suddenly choked and turned his head in embarrassment. But in his heart, he wanted to investigate carefully. What exactly happened yesterday? Sure enough, after Lin Jun maintained the black hole devour state for 3 seconds, a crack appeared in the void, and King Yinluo's divine realm appeared. Lin Jun could condense the divine realm. As the third-ranked King Yinluo of the endless races, it wasn't surprising that he could condense the divine realm as well. Lin Jun had long been on guard against this move of his. If he didn't break the other party's divine realm, King Yinluo might still be resurrected. All his previous efforts would be in vain. Lin Jun even suspected that King Yinluo was killed so easily because he wanted to use the divine realm to resurrect and then kill him in a new state. Unfortunately, he miscalculated. He didn't expect Lin Jun to use this move too. Of course, he wouldn't give him a chance. Lin Jun, you're vicious. I'm not convinced. Let's meet again in the heavenly fire battle. After King Yinluo's unwilling roar, his divine realm completely collapsed, and the twisted soul also disappeared completely in the black hole. A stream of light flashed, and King Yinluo's body returned to the seat of the Hall of Fame of the Endless Races. However, he lost. He was no longer fated to be in the top 4 of the 2 races. He could only fight for the 5th place as the 3rd in the group. King Yinluo left the stage. Lin Jun changed back to his human form and sat on the ground in exhaustion. Chapter 994. On the side of the ground races, a wave of cheers erupted. Lin Jun was too capable. He was actually able to eliminate the veteran powerhouse of the endless races, King Yama. What a great victory this was. Dong Shuahan, Heavenly Sin, and King Yama. These 3 people were the 3 carriages of the endless races. They rarely failed. Even Yi Xingcai, who was in 2nd place on the ground race, didn't dare to say that she could win against King Yama. However, Lin Jun did it. Lin Jun's victory allowed the ground races to avoid the awkward situation of 3 against 5, saving the face of the ground races. At this point, this round of the challenge competition was over. All the qualified people had been determined. There were a total of 8 people who qualified. They were Xiong Jing, Yi Xingcai, Augustine, and Lin Jun from the ground races. On the side of the endless races, it was Dong Shuahan, Heavenly Sin, Edward, and Heavenly Peck. The ones who entered the 5th and 6th place were King Yama, Onluo, Crane Shadow, and Demon King of Chaos. The ones fighting for the 7th to 10th place were Giant Dragon King, India, Dark Phoenix, Sky Splitting Tiger King, Sky Swordsman, Sky Patroller, Red Widow, and Elemental Controller. Because the endless races had one more person than the ground races, the ground races could only be ranked in the top 9. After the 9th place, it would be the 11th place. There was no 10th place. This was a humiliation for the ground races. Fortunately, Lin Jun was capable enough. Otherwise, the ground races would have one less person in the top 4. The minor rankings were also worth fighting for. For example, the 5th and 6th place felt very different. The 8th and 10th place also sounded different. Therefore, the powerhouses still had to fight for the next round of battles. The next round of battles was set for tomorrow, which was also the last day. However, Lin Jun was a little tired of fighting. In the top 8, the only person Lin Jun wanted to fight was Augustine. The reason why he fought so hard to enter the top 4 was to fight Augustine. As for the others, Lin Jun didn't have the desire to fight now. Therefore, when the groupings were out, Lin Jun made a request. He didn't speak through the dimensional universe. Instead, he stood up from his seat and said to the rostrum, "Everyone, I have a request." Han Xian and Old Man, Qin Jing, both had a good impression of Lin Jun. When they heard Lin Jun speak, they immediately paid attention. "I've come to participate in the challenge tournament. My final goal is to defeat the manager of Skyfire City's surface races, Augustine. Now that I've entered the top 4, I request to have a one-on-one duel with Augustine. This duel will determine the victor between us." Han Xian was stunned for a moment. Then, he turned to Lin Jun and said, "Please be more specific. It's very simple. I, Lin Jun, admit defeat in all of my battles with others. The only exception is the battle with Augustine." As he spoke, Lin Jun pointed at Augustine and said, "Augustine, if you have the ability, let's have a one-on-one duel. I don't think you need to compete with the others. After losing your trump card, you won't have any other achievements. Just you and me. Our duel will determine the third and fourth place of the surface races. It will also resolve the grudge between you and me. How about it?" Han Xian and Old Man Qin Jing discussed for a while. They felt that it was better for them to come up with a plan. Moreover, the real host of this challenge tournament was Snow White. Even if they agreed, it didn't count. Augustine's expression was uncertain. He was also thinking in his heart. Lin Jun was right. Augustine didn't have the confidence to defeat any of the remaining 6 people. Dong Xuahan, Xiong Jing, and Heavenly Sin were undefeatable to him. Yixing Cai and Edward were also difficult to defeat. Only Sky Peck looked slightly weaker. However, he didn't rely on his trump card. Instead, he relied on his spear skills. Augustine also didn't have the confidence to win. Augustine wanted to have a one-on-one duel with Lin Jun. However, he was a little afraid. Previously, he dared to bet with Lin Jun because the difference in status and strength between the two was too great. Augustine believed that he could easily subdue Lin Jun. That was why he made the bet without any scruples. However, the situation now was different. Lin Jun's strong pursuit had chased him all the way to the top 4 of the 2 races. All of this gave Augustine too much psychological pressure. It was as if he was running for his life while someone was chasing after him, and that person was getting closer and closer. That feeling was too uncomfortable. Especially after advancing to the top 4, Augustine couldn't see through Lin Jun anymore. However, now that everyone was watching, Augustine really couldn't reject Lin Jun's suggestion. If he did, it would seem like he was a coward. After thinking for a while, Augustine said to Lin Jun, "Lin Jun, don't take it for granted. This is a small group. It's a battle between 8 people. It's not a one-on-one duel. You have to ask the others if they agree." As he said that, Augustine looked at Xiong Jing and Yixing Cai, hoping that they would say something. Xiong Jing crossed his arms in front of his chest. "This is your private matter. You could decide. Anyway, I never expected you to help in a competition for the top few spots. It doesn't matter." Yixing Cai didn't say anything. She seemed to have the same thoughts as Xiong Jing. However, the two of them didn't have the final say. The 4 people from the endless races had the final say. Dong Xuahan spread her hands slightly. "Why not? I think everyone would be very happy to have less fights. The 2 of you can settle alone." Heavenly Sin and the others wanted to say something, but seeing that Dong Xuahan had taken the lead, they shut their mouths. When Augustine saw the situation, he was still unwilling to accept it. He shouted again, "No, you don't have the final say. Only the princess of the endless races, Snow White, has the final say. She's not here now, so this matter doesn't count." As soon as he finished speaking, a huge water mirror appeared on the rostrum. Snow White appeared in the water mirror. How did this princess of the endless races, who had never been present, appear so quickly? Her outstanding beauty shocked the entire audience. The charm in her every move was enough to take one's life. Snow White opened her cherry lips. "I already know about your matters. We'll follow Lin Jun's suggestion. The first match tomorrow will be between the 2 of you to settle your grudges alone. At the same time, we'll decide who the 3rd and 4th place belongs to." After speaking, her beautiful peach blossom eyes swept across the crowd. Almost everyone felt that Snow White seemed to be looking at them. This was a strange feeling. Instantly, most of the men were dazed and disoriented. Lin Jun also gritted his teeth. What a vixen. This was simply displaying the charm of a woman to the extreme. However, he vaguely felt a sense of familiarity from Bai Shui. Today's competition is over. The final ranking will be held tomorrow. Disperse. The water mirror disappeared into thin air. Snow White was also nowhere to be seen. This made many people feel lost. Augustine's efforts failed. He glared fiercely at Lin Jun. "Lin Jun, don't think that you can win against me like this. You won't even be able to cry tomorrow." Augustine turned around and turned into a stream of light. disappearing from the dimensional universe and returning to the real world. Lin Jun also left the dimensional universe and returned to the residence where he was hiding. He first checked on Lin An's situation through the dimensional universe. Seeing that Lin Jun was still safe, Lin Jun was relieved. After closing the dimensional universe, Lin Jun looked at the dark sky of Sky Flame City outside the window. Suddenly, he wanted to go out for a walk. Last night was the most enjoyable night Lin Jun had ever experienced. It also made him miss it very much. He really hoped that he could have such a time again. However, Lin Jun was a warrior. His rationality could easily suppress his desire. He didn't want to play with fire at this critical moment. He suppressed this thought and decided to stay and cultivate. However, just because he didn't go out, it didn't mean that nothing would happen. At the management office of the endless races in Sky Flame City, this was originally Heavenly Sin's territory. However, it was now occupied by Princess Snow White from Qingqiu Mountain. Heavenly Sin had been in charge of Sky Flame City for a long time. He was extremely powerful here. He was now listening to the reports of his subordinates, reporting to Lord Heavenly Sin. Today, Her Highness subordinates are continuing to search door to door. However, the scale is much smaller. It seems that they are still looking for Lin Jun. Have they found him? Not yet, but I estimate that it should be about time. Those people are carrying soul detectors. Everyone's soul fluctuations can be displayed. If someone is controlled by Lin Jun to help cover for him, they definitely won't be able to escape the detection of the detectors. Heavenly Sin nodded slightly. It seemed that Her Highness really intended to capture Lin Jun. However, what was she going to do? Have you investigated the situation last night? We found some. Our people learned that last night, Dong Shuahan and Lin Jun appeared at the Chaos Bar. The two of them drank dozens of cups of Rainbow After Rain. Rainbow After Rain. As the manager of Sky Flame City, Heavenly Sin naturally knew what Rainbow After Rain meant. It was something that even he didn't dare to drink too much. The two of them actually drank dozens of cups. And then, after drinking all the wine, they looked a little drunk, especially Lord Dong Shuahan. She was almost carried out by Lin Jun. We've already checked the bar surveillance and confirmed it. And then, after that, Lin Jun brought Lord Dong Shuahan back to the Sky Flame Inn. They probably went to sleep. Then this morning, Lin Jun left the inn alone and disappeared. However, Lord Dong Shuahan only left after a long time. Heavenly Sin's face revealed a trace of hostility. They just want to sleep? How can it be that simple? If it's as you said, the two of them can be considered good drinking buddies. Why would Snow White make such a big fuss this morning to capture Lin Jun? Why hasn't she withdrawn her troops until now? Have you considered all of this? His subordinate immediately stammered and couldn't answer. Chapter 995. In Lin Jun's residence, the owner had prepared a table full of delicious food. The food from the endless races was very different from the races on the ground. The endless races were particular about raw food. For example, they wouldn't cook meat. After a simple cleaning and seasoning, they would slice the meat and eat it directly. They were particular about freshness. For example, fish, all kinds of seafood, and so on were eaten raw. Of course, there were also vegetables and plants, which had a different taste. Lin Jun felt uneasy after cultivating for a while, so he asked the owner to prepare the food of the endless races for him to enjoy. The owners of this house were two demons. In fact, they were the galactic beasts of the past, rabbit demons. Both of them had their souls locked by Lin Jun, so they were naturally obedient to Lin Jun's requests. Soon, they prepared a table full of food and took out their treasured wine. Lin Jun drank a few mouthfuls of wine after eating a silver spearfish. After tasting it, Lin Jun felt that the taste was far inferior to the Rainbow After Rain. However, the Rainbow After Rain was a luxury item, so these small families couldn't afford it. However, Lin Jun wasn't picky. He chatted with the couple while drinking, listening to some interesting stories about the endless races. One of the things that Lin Jun was more interested in was the Zhu Tian Emperor's concubine selection. Every monarch clan monarch would take Qingqiu Mountain's emperor's concubine as his wife. However, this time, there were two emperor's concubines. Even great Emperor Ju Tian had yet to make a decision on which one to take as his wife. Between Snow White and Bai Su, it would be painful for a man to give up either of them. This choice was indeed too difficult. Lin Jun was also interested. He didn't care about others, but Bai Su was a little fox who had accompanied him for a long time. Lin Jun didn't want her to marry some Ju Tian. However, Lin Jun couldn't do that for now, so he could only take one step at a time. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. The military is searching for Lin Jun. Open the door. There was a loud knock on the door. The male owner nodded at Lin Jun, indicating that everything would be fine, because there had been a few such searches today and nothing had happened. Lin Jun didn't really care. After tidying up, he turned around and returned to the inner room. Lin Jun used the transformation technique and turned into a qilin wood carving. At the same time, he let the male owner go out and deal with it. The door opened, and a few fierce-looking soldiers of the endless races came in. Each of them was at the divine will stage. These soldiers walked in and first checked the room. The other party did not discover his presence. A soldier said to the male lead, "Have you seen Lin Jun? It's the person in the painting." The man shook his head. "I've never seen him before." "It's not up to you to say that you haven't seen him before. Scan him." Another soldier came over and scanned the man's head with a metal ring. Seeing this scene, Lin Jun instinctively had a bad feeling. Sure enough, in the next moment, the metal ring emitted a beeping alarm. "Attention! This person's soul has been locked. Attention! This person's soul has been locked." The leader of the soldiers was stunned for a moment before he let out a sharp whistle and quickly spread the news in the dimensional universe to inform Her Royal Highness. "Take these two down." A few soldiers rushed forward and immediately took the man and woman down. In less than a second, a spatial tunnel appeared in the room. Under a white cloak, Dong Xuan passed through the spatial tunnel and arrived here. The soldiers bowed one after another. Dong Xuan waved her hand and walked in front of the man and woman. Under the cloak, her big eyes stared at them as a wave of mental strength surged out. "Speak. Where is the person who locked your soul?" A powerful mental strength surged over and directly broke the soul lock that Lin Jun had left in their minds. After the soul lock was broken, the two of them were confused for a moment before coming to their senses. When they saw Dong Xuan, they hurriedly knelt down. "Madam Dong Xuan, Lin Jun is inside. He's turned into a qilin wood carving." Bam! A wave of air surged and pushed the surrounding people far away. Darkness struck before everyone's eyes, and everyone lost consciousness. Dong Xuan took care of everyone and walked in. After entering the room, she scanned with her mental strength. Dong Xuan's gaze landed on a small wooden carving. The wooden carving was an animal. It was a black qilin. Dong Xuan stopped in her tracks and slowly walked in front of the black qilin. As her cheek approached, a strand of hair hung down, and a fragrance like orchids and musk enveloped her. What a cute little thing. Reaching out, Dong Xuan slowly lifted the qilin in front of her and sized it up. She reached out a slender finger and poked the little black qilin all over its body. "TSK, TSK. Why are these two little horns so tough? I heard that qilins have a stubborn temper. Are they stubborn? I'll let you bang your head against the wall later. Look at the mane on your neck. Does this represent the masculinity of a man? I wonder if you'll look like a dog after I pluck out all your hair. The teeth in your mouth look very sharp. Does your mouth contain a black hole that devours everything? If I sew your mouth shut and don't give you a chance to open it, will your black hole still appear?" As Dong Xuan spoke, her snow-white teeth creaked. She was obviously angry. As for the little black qilin, a drop of sweat slid down its forehead. Dong Xuan, who was still talking, lost control of her emotions when she saw the drop of sweat. "You're still pretending. Why can't you continue pretending? You shameless be asterisk starred. Shameless scum. Come out. How did you become a coward after doing such a despicable thing?" Dong Xuan's voice became shrill. She was the only one in this place. Everyone else had fainted, so she was not worried that others would discover her identity as a woman. The qilin, who wanted to make a move, stopped moving when it saw her like this. Seeing that this fellow was still pretending to be dead, Dong Shuahan was furious. Fine, fine, fine. If you're still pretending, I won't hold back. Dong Shuahan pinched the Qilin's two horns and tried to break them off. However, Dong Shuahan underestimated it. After transforming into such a small Qilin, the horns were the hardest part and were very difficult to grab. No matter how hard she tried, she could not break the Qilin's horns. After several failed attempts, Dong Shuahan's eyes turned red. Even if I can't break off your horns, I don't believe that I can't break off other parts of your body. If you don't come out, I'll break off your teeth. Her slender fingers tried to break the Qilin's teeth again. However, the Qilin's mouth had already closed tightly. There was no gap at all. You can shut your mouth, but you still have other flaws that I can exploit. Now, I'm going to pull off your tail. She reached out to grab the Qilin's tail, but the Qilin would not wait for death. It actually clamped its tail between its two hind legs. Hide! Let's see where you can hide. She reached out to grab it, but the tail could not be found. After grabbing around, she only managed to grab one. She pinched it a few times, and the tail suddenly swelled. However, Dong Shuahan let go of her hand as if she had been electrocuted. Shameless. Her lips were trembling with anger. She could no longer speak a complete sentence. She angrily threw the wooden sculpture in her hand to the ground. In a fit of anger, Dong Shuahan channeled her star power and hit the wooden sculpture hard. Her control of power was extremely precise. With one hit, 9 billion star power was concentrated and blasted down. A ball of starlight burst out, and the Qilin on the ground revealed its original form after one hit. That was Lin Jun. However, Lin Jun was extremely miserable now. There was a huge hole in his body, and half of his body was gone. Moreover, Dong Shuahan could see that Lin Jun was on the verge of death after being hit by her attack. Dong Shuahan, who was bent on revenge, was suddenly stunned. Although she wanted revenge, she did not expect Lin Jun to die so easily. For a moment, she felt a little lost. What's going on? What's wrong with you? Why didn't you resist at all? If you resisted a little more, this wouldn't have happened. Lin Jun lay on the ground. Blood gushed out of his mouth, and he revealed a sad smile. Yesterday, I know I did something wrong. I can't forgive myself. Today, I thought a lot. I'm afraid. I don't have much time left. I didn't resist because I owe you. Lin Jun raised his eyes that could barely open. Ever since I started practicing martial arts, I have never regretted anything. Yesterday, Dong Shuahan's eyes were slightly red. The crazy memory of last night surged in her mind. Lin Jun's hot lips seemed to have some residual warmth on them. In his eyes, there was deep affection. This reduced the resentment in her heart. Did you regret yesterday? Dong Shuahan asked a question that she had always wanted to ask. Lin Jun shook his head with all his might, as if he had used up the last of his strength. No. If I could go back in time, I would still make the same choice. Because you attracted me so much. You were like the brightest flame. I knew that there was an abyss in front of me, but I was still like a moth drawn to the flame. All of this is what I asked for. Fortunately, I'm returning it to you now. Dong Shuahan couldn't help but twitch her nose under the little fox mask. Her heart was in turmoil, but she couldn't describe what she was feeling. I did it on purpose to provoke you. You can kill me with your own hands. That way, I could be at ease. At this point, Lin Jun suddenly stretched out his hand and grabbed Dong Shuahan's hand. He said anxiously, "Shuer, I want to call you that." Before Dong Shuahan could say anything, Lin Jun continued, Can you forgive me? Dong Shuahan took a deep breath. She raised her swan-like neck and tried her best to hold back the tears in her eyes. A man's words were kind when he was about to die. This was his repentance. The strong hatred in her heart had basically disappeared. She lowered her head and nodded slightly at Lin Jun. It's all in the past. I forgive you. Lin Jun smiled with relief. Dong Shuahan smiled back. She stretched out her hand and tried to cover Lin Jun's eyes. She could clearly feel that Lin Jun's life was coming to an end. Chapter 996. Hearing this voice, Dong Shuahan was stunned. But what happened next made her even more unable to accept it. As a burst of medicinal fragrance spread from Lin Jun's body, The originally extremely serious injuries quickly began to recover, and the vitality that had disappeared reappeared in his body. Her white hand habitually covered Lin Jun's eyelids twice, but Lin Jun's eyes opened wider and wider. You, you, aren't you dead? Lin Jun revealed an awkward smile. Yes, I just died, but other than my identity as a warrior, I also have a profession as an alchemist, and a god-level alchemist at that. Dong Shuahan's face turned ugly. Hee hee. There's a saying among the surface races. It's called dying and coming back to life. It's probably referring to my situation, dying and coming back to life. I believe Shui can understand it, right? Dong Shuahan gritted her teeth. Yes, I really can understand it. I can understand it too well. I can understand that you're a shameless scoundrel liar. Dong Shuahan, who felt that she had been seriously deceived, couldn't bear it anymore. In a fit of anger, she actually grabbed Lin Jun's neck. Lin Jun wouldn't give up easily, but in terms of strength, he was really not as good as Dong Shuahan, so he simply used a shameless method. He reached under Dong Shuahan's armpit and used the most shameless and effective method to sneak attack. The two of them rolled violently on the ground, and Dong Shuahan's white cloak was also scattered to the side, revealing the little fox mask on her cheeks. Lin Jun's tickling sneak attack made her body weak, and she could no longer grab Lin Jun's neck. The angry Dong Shuahan actually opened her mouth and bit Lin Jun's shoulder fiercely. This time, Lin Jun didn't resist and let his blood flow. Dong Shuahan was completely lying on Lin Jun's body at this time. Lin Jun stretched out his hand and gently stroked her hair, feeling the soft and beautiful curve of her back, and the corner of his mouth revealed a trace of a smile. Hey, we had an agreement before. You have already forgiven me. Why are you still biting me now? Dong Shuahan's anger had not subsided. She shook her head and bit Lin Jun's shoulder. She was mumbling something that Lin Jun had deliberately pretended to be dead to deceive her. Lin Jun chuckled. Bite me. As long as you can calm down, you can bite me however you want. I made you bleed once, and you made me bleed once. This time, we're even. Dong Shuahan, who was trying hard to bite Lin Jun, was stunned. She raised her head in confusion. When did you make me bleed? Lin Jun blinked at her. Last night. Even through the mask, Lin Jun could see the other party's earlobes and chin turning red. At this moment, Lin Jun seemed to be able to feel that she was about to smoke from her 7 orifices. He could not help but secretly cry that this was not good. This time, she was really going to go berserk. Sure enough, in the next moment, Dong Shuahan's pink fists were already raining down on him like a storm. The huge gap in strength between the two of them caused Lin Jun to be unable to resist much at all. He could not use any means to fight back. Immediately, he was hit until he was dizzy and saw stars. Oh no! In a moment of happiness, I provoked this woman to go berserk. She is the number 1 person below the gods of the 2 races. If this continues, it will not be strange if she is beaten to death. Feeling that Dong Shuahan was about to lose her mind, Lin Jun had no choice but to endure the other party's drumming fists and hug the woman on top of him tightly. Dong Shuahan was careless and was hugged by Lin Jun. Even in this situation, her small fists were still short and fast. They hit Lin Jun's back and almost made him vomit blood. Lin Jun used both hands. Looking at Dong Shuahan, who was close at hand, he simply made up his mind and kissed the other party's cherry lips. He wrapped the woman in his arms tightly, and his tongue entered the other party's mouth. After being humiliated by Lin Jun, Dong Shuahan was not to be trifled with. She fiercely bit off the tongue that had invaded her mouth. Lin Jun's eyes lit up. This move was effective against ordinary people, but it was useless against him who had the immortal spirit body. He concentrated his strength, and the wound on his tongue quickly healed. He continued to plunder the other party's sweetness. Dong Shuahan's attacks continued, hitting Lin Jun's back like a drum. She gritted her teeth fiercely and was determined not to give in to Lin Jun. The two of them rolled back and forth on the ground. Lin Jun was on top of her for a while, and she was on top of him for a while. Facing this crazy woman, Lin Jun knew that if he could not suppress her this time, there would be a lot of trouble in the future. Lin Jun made up his mind and let go of the other party's cherry lips that were swollen from kissing. He said fiercely, "No matter how much you resist, you will not change the fact that you are my woman. In this life, from now on, you are mine. From now on, in the next life, and the life after that, you will be mine. It will never change. Even if the galaxy is destroyed, even if heaven and earth are reborn, you will not be able to escape from my hands. You will not be able to marry anyone else. Just give up. Impossible. I will never marry you. I can't wait to kill you." Dong Xuahan stared at Lin Jun, holding back the tears that were about to burst out of her eyes. Her eyes were full of humiliation. "Oomph. I'm afraid that's not up to you." With that, Lin Jun pressed down again and kissed the other party's cherry lips. Dong Xuahan's body trembled and her eyes were full of struggle. She did not know how things had turned out like this. Originally, she had planned to catch Lin Jun and kill him. However, in her confusion, it had turned into such a flirtatious situation. Her determination to kill Lin Jun was not as strong after the first time she made her move. Women would always treat their first man differently, and Dong Xuahan was no exception. She felt that her state of mind was a little different. Subconsciously, she even had a feeling of wanting to indulge. This man was actually very outstanding, but Dong Xuahan thought of her other identity. She could not do this. If she indulged, everything in the future would be over. She felt a chill on her chest and woke up from her intoxication. Dong Xuahan grabbed Lin Jun's hand that was wreaking havoc on her chest and pushed it away forcefully. The two of them separated and stood up. Dong Xuahan covered her chest and gasped for breath. It was a close call just now. She was almost ruined by Lin Jun again. Lin Jun felt a little regretful. Dong Xuahan's self-control was still too strong. If they could do it again, her hostility towards him would be reduced. What a pity. Dong Xuahan calmed down for a while and looked at Lin Jun with a complicated expression. Lin Jun wiped the corner of his mouth with his hand. There was a wound that was bitten by Dong Xuahan, and there was a little blood. "Shwe, I think we need to talk frankly. I'll give you a chance now. If you still hate me in your heart, then you can kill me again. This time, I can't revive without the pill in my mouth. I definitely won't resist or fight back. If you don't want to kill me in your heart, then I think we can really talk. Now, the initiative is in your hands. It's up to you to decide." With that, Lin Jun stood in front of Dong Xuahan with his hand behind his back without any fear. Dong Xuahan, on the other hand, was hesitating. She didn't know what to choose. If she killed Lin Jun, everything could not go back to the past. However, if she didn't kill Lin Jun, once the news spread, it would definitely set off a huge storm. The heavy pressure in the future would make Dong Xuahan breathless. She didn't even dare to face her own heart. What was she thinking? Just as she was in a dilemma, there was a sudden fluctuation in the space. Dong Xuahan's expression changed. She grabbed Lin Jun and said, "Come into my inner world." Lin Jun also felt that something was wrong and nodded without hesitation. The power of the world on Dong Xuahan's body fluctuated. Lin Jun disappeared. Entering the inner world was definitely not an easy task. It required two people to trust each other in order to achieve the fusion of the power of the world. This was because the inner world was a martial artist's biggest secret. Not to mention martial artists, even ordinary people would not be willing to share their secrets with others. If they didn't trust each other, then the inner world would definitely not be opened. It was also impossible to enter at will. Even if it was a close relative, there were many who didn't trust each other. Therefore, when Dong Xuahan put Lin Jun into her inner world, she was shocked. "It turns out that I subconsciously trusted him so much. I was so sure that he would never hurt me. Otherwise, why would I not be on guard and open my inner world to him without hesitation?" However, Dong Xuahan didn't have time to think about this because a passage appeared in front of her eyes. Heavenly Sin had already appeared in the room with his people. When his feet landed in the room, Heavenly Sin's gloomy eyes first looked around, then looked at Dong Xuahan. He revealed a sinister smile and said, "Hee, it seems that our Lord Dong Xuahan has cleaned up all traces. I can't find any evidence in this room." Dong Xuahan had already put on her white cloak. She replied coldly, What are you talking about? I don't understand. Hee hee. You don't understand? Then it seems that I need to explain it to you. Heavenly Sin paced slowly in the room with his hands behind his back. I've heard of a legend. Back then, there was a proud daughter of heaven in Qingxiu Mountain. She was extremely talented and beautiful. Since she was young, she was regarded as the future empress candidate. This woman had received all the best resources and cultivation methods since she was young. Every time she cultivated, she would be one step ahead of others. However, she was naughty when she was young. She went out to explore alone, and no one could find her. Until that challenge, when I met Dong Xuahan. Heavenly Sin stared firmly at Dong Xuahan. My lord, you defeated me in the first challenge, causing my inner demons to grow and making it difficult for me to improve. At that time, I was thinking, when did such an influential person appear in the endless races? Because I knew that to have your strength, it was definitely not something that could be cultivated by a small family. But I searched all over the world and still couldn't find your true origin. It was as if you appeared out of thin air. Chapter 997. Hearing Heavenly Sin's words, Dong Xuahan turned sideways and said coldly, "Why should I tell you? Ha! I'm afraid you can't make up a lie to hide it, my princess." Hearing Heavenly Sin's words, Dong Xuahan turned around. "What did you say? Don't deny it. In the entire endless sea of stars, I'm afraid the only one who matches your identity is the princess of our endless race, Snow White. It's just that you played a little trick back then and deliberately appeared in the form of a man, so no one suspected you. But if you want to hide it from me, I'm afraid you're still a little lacking." Heavenly Sin twitched his nose and sniffed the air twice. "Look at how fragrant it is here. Your Highness, it's time for you to admit it," Tang Wulin said with a smile. Dong Xuahan was not moved at all. "I don't know what nonsense you're talking about, but I'm warning you not to talk nonsense. It won't do you any good to anger me. Yes, I know I'm no match for your Highness, but your Highness, don't forget that I'm from the Imperial clan. My brother is your future husband, the master of the endless sea of stars, the Zhu Tian Emperor." Dong Xuahan's body trembled slightly when she heard these words. Obviously, these words had touched her. "My future sister-in-law, if there's any problem with me, someone will immediately report to my brother, so don't try to do anything that's disadvantageous to me. I've made a backup of everything in the dimensional universe. He'll know everything, and don't try to hide it from me. As a manager of Skyfire City, I have too many opportunities to know too many secrets. Everything you've done is not untraceable. In fact, there are also many flaws. Once I investigate, I'll immediately find out." Dong Xuahan did not say anything this time. The Green Hill bloodline has always been the wife of the Imperial clan. You and your sister Baisu are the future Imperial concubine candidates. Although the final candidate has not been decided yet, you definitely won't have any other choice. Heavenly Sin had obviously confirmed Dong Xuahan's identity and continued to press her. "Now, your Highness, can you tell me what kind of shady business you have with Lin Jin? What happened last night? Where's he now?" Dong Xuahan had no way to deal with Heavenly Sin's aggressive questioning. She simply flung her sleeves and said, "I don't know what nonsense you were talking about. Now get out of my way, or I won't be polite." Sin's eyes narrowed slightly. "Well, since your Highness has said so, I won't say anything more. But I have to warn you, if you don't want others to know, don't do it in the first place. I will report everything here to my brother. Whatever." Dong Xuahan spat out these words through gritted teeth. Looking at Dong Xuahan's stubbornness, Sin of Heaven did not dare to be too presumptuous. If he were to anger the other party and kill him on the spot, that would be troublesome. Even though he was strong, he was still a little lacking compared to the other party. With a cold snort, Heavenly Sin got up and left. After Heavenly Sin left, Dong Xuahan waved her hand, and the space was completely isolated. She waved her hand again, and Lin Jun appeared from her inner world. After Lin Jun appeared, his expression was somewhat complicated. At this moment, Lin Jun realized that Dong Xuahan was the princess of the Endless Tribe, Qingxiu Mountain, Snow White, Baisu's elder sister. No matter who the other party was, since she had this layer of relationship with Lin Jun could not pretend that nothing had happened. He walked to Dong Shuahan's side, gently lifted her cloak, and then took off her mask. Dong Shuahan also removed her mask and let Lin Jun take it off. A bewitching and charming face appeared in front of Lin Jun. Schwerer, a teardrop fell from the corner of Snow White's eyes. Then, she snatched the mask from Lin Jun's hand and put it on her face again. Now that you've seen who I am, are you satisfied? Before Lin Jun could answer, Snow White stopped him. You don't have to say anything. I'm also a person of my word. Since I said that I forgive you, then I forgive you. I won't look for you again in the future, but please keep this a secret. Just pretend that you've never seen me and never know me. Lin Jun's expression changed. How can I do that? No, what else do you want? I'm going to marry a Ju Tian in the future. It's impossible for me to have anything to do with you. What happened between us was just a dream, just an accident. From now on, we'll go our separate ways and never have any contact with each other again. We'll never see each other again. After saying that, Snow White turned around and was about to leave. Lin Jun said, We'll see each other again during the Heavenly Fire War, right? Snow White stopped in her tracks. Yes, but by then, we'll have nothing to do with each other. If I have a chance, I'll kill you. I'll miss you. Lin Jun's words made Dong Shuahan, who was about to leave, stop in her tracks again. Her thin shoulders trembled a few times, as if she was crying. The temperature in the room dropped a lot, and a cold wind blew, making Lin Jun shiver uncontrollably. Lin Jun had already mastered the cold of negative 200 degrees Celsius. If he felt cold, then it meant that the temperature was below negative 200 degrees Celsius. Don't say such things again in the future, Lin Jun. Forget about me. A snowflake slowly floated down in front of Lin Jun. Snow White had disappeared. Lin Jun reached out his hand and let the snowflake fall on his palm. He allowed a deep breath. Although it was a little regretful, he had finally achieved his initial goal, which was that Dong Shuahan would no longer chase after him. This was a great achievement. As for the future, although Snow White said that she would no longer have anything to do with him, who could say for sure what would happen in the future? As for her wanting to marry a Ju Tian, Lin Jun didn't think that would happen at all. Because Lin Jun was growing rapidly, there would be a day when Lin Jun could do whatever he liked and bring the person he liked back to his side, and no one could stop him. Sure, it's so cold. Lin Jun lowered his head and looked at the snowflake in his palm. He was shocked. Skyfire City, Endless Race Management Office. Augustine sat here, feeling a little uneasy. He had been managing Skyfire City for a long time, but this was the first time he came to the management office of Endless Race. The manager here was Heavenly Sin. Although Augustine was conceited, he knew that there was still a big gap between him and Heavenly Sin. This place was no different from a tiger's den for him, and he would try not to come if he could. But he didn't expect that Heavenly Sin would ask him to come here today. When Heavenly Sin in a black robe appeared, Augustine couldn't help but stand up. Hee. Mr. Augustine, have a seat. Augustine sat down a little uneasily, not knowing what Heavenly Sin was up to. Mr. Augustine, speaking of which, you and I have been in Skyfire City for tens of millions of years, right? Yes, it's been more than 50 million years. I haven't had a chance to talk to Mr. Augustine. Today, I finally have such an opportunity. Heavenly Sin, let's not beat around the bush. If you have something to say, just say it. Okay, you're a straightforward person. Then I'll be straightforward. I wonder if Mr. Augustine has any confidence in tomorrow's battle with Lin Jun. Augustine frowned slightly. He was not confident in this battle because he had already used the 8-split revolving blade. He had no trump cards in tomorrow's battle. Heavenly Sin, this has nothing to do with you, right? You can't say that. For the battle between you and Lin Jun, I still hope to see you win. If you win, then you will be in the top 3 of the surface races. Isn't this what you want? Maybe I can provide you with some help? Why? Augustine didn't believe that a pie would fall from the sky. It doesn't matter why. If you really want to know the result, then just take it that I'm not happy with Lin Jun. As long as you want to win, I can provide you with help, and you don't have to pay any price. What do you think? Augustine didn't speak for a long time. He was wondering how such a good thing could happen, and didn't dare to agree easily. Heavenly Sin smiled and reached out his hand. He took out something from the space ring and placed it on the table. This is a treasure from our endless race, the Emperor race. It's called the Undying Demon Eye. When you fight, as long as you use this thing, its single eye can continuously absorb the opponent's star power. Moreover, this thing's vitality is definitely beyond your imagination. When the battle starts tomorrow, as long as you take out this thing, then Lin Jun will fall into a bottomless pit and will never be able to rise again. Augustine looked at the one-eyed monster that was the size of a watermelon on the table, and his heart was in a state of turmoil. This is the Emperor race's magic pet. That's right. I don't mind telling you that this is my brother, the pet of my race's Ju Tian Emperor. If you take it, you will even gain the friendship of the Ju Tian Emperor. Moreover, no one will suspect anything because it has never appeared in front of the world. Mr. Augustine, what path to take is up to you. With that, Heavenly Sin turned and left the room, leaving the room to Augustine. Augustine was extremely conflicted. As the manager of Skyfire City, he certainly knew the current situation of the two races. It could be said that the surface races were no longer a match for the endless race. Under such circumstances, should he take the Ju Tian's item? Thinking of Lin Jun, the possibility of losing, and the fluke mentality, Augustine finally could not control his hand. A star rose into the sky. A new day had arrived in Skyfire City. The people of Skyfire City were all concerned about the results of the last day of the challenge. There was no suspense about the result of the battle. The endless race had started to gain too many points, and the surface races could no longer reverse the situation. Now, there were only a few points that people were concerned about. First of all, who would take first place in the two races? This candidate should be between Dong Xuahan and Xiangjing. Also, after the endless race finished the battle, they would make a request for the Heavenly Fire War. They wanted to confirm the time, scale, number of participants, and so on. Of course, there was another point, which was the challenge between Lin Jun and Augustine. Who would win? As the challenge began, people began to enter one after another. Chapter 998. Everyone had originally thought that the princess of the endless races, Snow White, would definitely appear today. However, to everyone's surprise, Snow White still did not appear on the rostrum. The city lord of Fu Guang City, Han Xian, was the first to speak. Everyone, today is the last day of the challenge competition. The warriors of the Hall of Fame of the two races will decide the final winner here. The two deities beside me, Yuan Sage Venerable and Remnant Jing Elder, will witness the results of this battle. The winner will also announce the time and number of participants in the final battle of Skyfire. I hope that everyone can break through their limits and continue to work hard to achieve good results in this victory. All right, without further ado, the competition begins. First, the first battle, Lin Jun of the ground race versus Augustine. The battle between Lin Jun and Augustine was very interesting because both of them only had one battle. The winner would be third and the loser would be fourth. Moreover, it was said that the two of them had a grudge. It seemed that Lin Jun's son was still imprisoned by Augustine. If Lin Jun won this battle, his son would be released. Hence, this was a battle that they could not afford to lose. Augustine was the first to enter the arena. As the manager of the ground race side of Skyfire City, Augustine was quite famous and many people knew him. However, when Augustine entered the arena today, he gave off a different vibe. He was dressed in black and his long hair was loose. When his eyes opened and closed, they were faintly red and inexplicably gave off an evil vibe. After entering the arena, Augustine raised his hand and pointed at Lin Jun. Lin Jun, come up and accept your death. A figure flashed, and Lin Jun also appeared in the arena. He exhaled, and his breath was like white smoke with a chill. Augustine, you tried your best to get rid of me all the way. You didn't expect to meet me in this arena, did you? This shows that there are some things that you can't avoid. Ha ha ha. You boast shamelessly. Do you think you're qualified to fight with me? I've managed Heavenly Flame City for over 50 million years and have experienced the last Heavenly Flame Great War. How could I be afraid of a mere 1,000-year-old child like you? I was worried that you wouldn't be able to keep up with my pace, but since you've kept up, I can rest assured. Today on this stage, you will know what true strength is. Your bold words can't cover up your guilty conscience. Your other half, Lin Yin, was also a braggart. In the end, didn't she still fall in front of me? You're the same, but you can celebrate in advance. Celebrate what? To celebrate your 4th place. Compared to last time, you've improved. Augustine's face darkened. You don't need to talk nonsense with me. If you want to see your son, then wait for your next life. Clang! As his voice fell, he unsheathed his long blade. Just like the first time he saw Lin Jun, he displayed a world-shaking blade. But this time, his blade technique was no longer as invincible in Lin Jun's eyes. Pulling out his long sword, Lin Jun brazenly faced the attack. The blade moved fiercely while the sword moved nimbly. The two of them immediately engaged in a fierce battle. Although the two of them could be considered of the same race, their battle was more intense than a battle between two opposing races. Augustine's blade slashed across Lin Jun's chest, leaving a deep wound. Lin Jun completely ignored the blade and similarly stabbed out, piercing through Augustine's lower abdomen. Augustine cried out in pain and swung his saber diagonally, almost severing Lin Jun's shoulder blade in two. Lin Jun still did not dodge. His sword slid down and directly cut off nearly 1/3 of the flesh on Augustine's thigh. The two of them went back and forth. They did not even use any exquisite blade technique or sword technique at all. They did not dodge or evade. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Bursts of blood mist rose into the air. Both of them had very strong recovery abilities, but at this moment, their recovery abilities were completely unable to withstand each other's attacks. Soon, both of them became bloody gourds. The battle had just begun, but it had already entered a white-hot state. This was no longer a competition of combat skills. It was a competition of mental power, willpower, resistance, and the determination to fight to the death. At this time, whoever took a step back would undoubtedly lose their momentum, which would be extremely disadvantageous for the following battle. Before this, Augustine had never thought that someone could fight with him face-to-face in a life-and-death battle. He was ranked in the top 5 of the Hall of Fame, relying on his strong recovery ability. However, the recovery ability that he was proud of did not have the slightest advantage in front of Lin Jun. This guy almost completely disregarded his own safety. Every time Augustine had chance to kill, he would also face Lin Jun's fatal attack. Unless Augustine had the courage to die together with Lin Jun, this chance to kill would turn into a trap. He would have no choice but to withdraw and dodge, which would become a burden. He did not know why Lin Jun was so courageous to die together with him. As a powerful warrior, Augustine did not lack courage. However, the problem at hand was that Augustine thought that he could defeat Lin Jun without dying together with him. Therefore, he was already at a disadvantage in this kind of face-to-face battle. Clang, 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 clang. Puff, 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 puff. After many consecutive smothering blows, Augustine, who was covered in wounds, finally could not stand this kind of close to self-abuse. After withdrawing and being hit by Lin Jun's sword, Augustine withdrew from the battle group. His whole body was covered in blood, and almost 1/4 of the flesh on his body was cut off. Augustine could no longer be seen as a human. Although Lin Jun's situation wasn't any better, he had lost the first round of the competition. Come on, you cowardly bastard. Why don't you dare to come? Lin Jun's momentum was soaring at this moment. He stepped toward Augustine, raised a long sword in his hand, and slashed again. Augustine blocked with his sword in a sorry state and staggered back. It could be said that he had lost all his face. After blocking several times in a row, Augustine no longer cared about his dignity. He ran far away in a sorry state and ended this wave of battle with a cowardly attitude. However, he did not dare to retreat too far, because he had to ensure that he did not give Lin Jun a chance to transform into the black hole beast. 100 meters away, Augustine steadied himself and said with some annoyance, Lin Jun, don't think that I'm afraid of you. I just feel that it's not worth the price to deal with you. Is that so? Who doesn't know how to brag? Augustine, I've also investigated your information. You've already used up all your killing moves. Now that you've exhausted all your tricks, show me what you've got." Augustine fiercely clenched his teeth. "Lin Jun, you forced me to do this. Today, I'll show you what I'm capable of." He raised one hand, and a black dot suddenly appeared in the air. The black gas in the surroundings gathered towards the black dot and spun like a windmill. At the center of the black dot, an eye appeared. It could be said that it was a meatball, but this meatball was a huge eye. Other than that, there were only a few tentacles and nothing else. However, as soon as this one-eyed monster appeared, Lin Jun immediately felt that something was wrong. This monster was obviously not any creature that Lin Jun had seen before, so it must have come from the depths of the endless sea of stars. The black gas lingered, and an evil aura leaked out. Augustine looked at Lin Jun and sneered. "Lin Jun, you asked for this. Aren't you strong and brave? Let's see if you can still be brave after your star power has been exhausted. Open." Augustine roared, and the one-eyed monster's eye suddenly opened. The three colors of black, white, and red formed the hue of this eye. After it opened, the black gas rapidly spun, like an abyss that could swallow everything. This eye locked on a Lin Jun, and the black gas suddenly spun faster. Not good. Lin Jun actually felt that his star power was rapidly draining, and it was quickly rushing into the eye. What is this thing? It can actually absorb people's star power. Without waiting for Lin Jun to react, Augustine had already brandished his long sword and attacked again. "Lin Jun, you don't have a chance anymore. Let's go again." Lin Jun blocked with his sword. After a short rest and recovery, Augustine became even more ferocious than before. His strength, as one of the top 5 races on the ground, was also vividly displayed at this moment. He didn't want to kill Lin Jun immediately, but only wanted to entangle with Lin Jun. With this one-eyed monster absorbing Lin Jun's star power, the longer it dragged on, the more advantageous it would be for him. This situation fell into the eyes of the people below the arena, and they were all discussing it. The people on the ground didn't understand. Augustine's monster didn't look simple. The star power on Lin Jun's body surged upwards like a tide. If this continued, it wouldn't be long before his star power was exhausted. On the side of the endless races, Dong Shuahan suddenly stood up. Her body trembled slightly. Others didn't recognize this one-eyed monster, but Dong Shuahan did. This was clearly the Zhu Tian's dead pet, the undying demon eye. He's making a move. He's making a move against Lin Jun. Dong Shuahan slowly sat down and put her hands into her black hair. She knew that this matter was a little troublesome. There was a sneer on Heavenly Sin's face as he sat steadily, like Mount Tai. Everything was under his control. A string of sparks rushed between the two. Augustine was like a maggot in a tarsal bone, entangling Lin Jun tightly. No matter what kind of injury he had to pay, he refused to retreat even half a step. Under Augustine's entanglement, Lin Jun couldn't help but feel his body begin to weaken. In less than a minute, Lin Jun's star power had been drained close to 500 million. If this continued, Lin Jun would have no star power to use in 10 minutes, even without Augustine's help. No, if you want to win, you must get rid of this one-eyed monster. Augustine's long saber attacked his waist. This time, Lin Jun didn't block it. He just tilted his body slightly to avoid the sharp edge. He raised his sword and slashed at the one-eyed monster. Abyss! A space crack appeared, and the monster was cut in half. Lin Jun was also seriously injured by Augustine. His body rolled and fell to the ground. Chapter 999. Seeing Lin Jun's sword fail, Augustine laughed. "Ha ha ha! Lin Jun, don't waste your energy. This is the undying demon eye. You must have never heard of this kind of high-grade thing. If you have any means, just let me see if you can deal with this demon." Lin Jun certainly wouldn't admit defeat so easily. Ignoring the wound on his waist that was cut open by Augustine, he raised one hand and a thunderbolt fell down. The shining thunderbolt heavily bombarded the undying demon eye. Silver snakes jumped and lightning shot out in all directions, but after being bombarded by the thunderbolt, the undying demon eye was like taking a bath, not causing the slightest damage. Poof! The long blade pierced Lin Jun's shoulder, adding another big wound. The star power in his body leaked out, as if it was leaking. Lin Jun wanted to use the black hole devour, but Augustine in front of him was desperately entangling him. So Lin Jun didn't have any chance. Then let's try this. Lin Jun turned his palm, and a dazzling flame appeared with a bang, completely shrouding the undying demon eye in monstrous flames. Lin Jun's bright blue flame was almost the limit of the flame. The undying demon eye emitted a burst of barbecue smell in the flame and was soon burnt. But when the flame dissipated, the undying demon eye's body also faded, and new flesh immediately reappeared on its body. Even Lin Jun's star power didn't stop devouring it. Augustine laughed strangely and kept pestering Lin Jun, his long blade like lightning, not giving Lin Jun any chance to transform into the black hole beast. Lin Jun, you are finished. Accept your fate. Soon your star power will be exhausted, and now you are no longer my opponent. In a moment, I will cut you into pieces inch by inch. If you want to save your son, Lin Jun, I will only consider if you kneel in front of me and repent and beg for mercy. If you want to play rough with me, Lin Jun, you could go cultivate for a few million years. More and more wounds appeared on Lin Jun's body. His left arm was broken, and Lin Jun didn't even have time to recover because his astral power had dropped to 4 billion. The people below the stage could clearly feel the change in the situation. Everyone's face was solemn. The thing that Augustine had created was too terrifying. An unkillable monster that could continuously devour a warrior's star power was simply the nemesis of warriors. Not to mention Lin Jun. Anyone who encountered it would be unlucky. Yi Xingcai looked at the undying demon eye that kept spinning in the air and let out a deep breath. She said to Xiongjing beside her, Lord Xiongjing, if I were to face Augustine, the outcome would be the same as Lin Jun's. I have no chance of winning. Xiongjing's face was also a little heavy. This thing is in Augustine's hands. If it was in Heavenly Sin's hands, I'm afraid I wouldn't even be able to get past him. If I want to win, the only way is to kill the user with thunderous means. If the strength is on par, it is basically impossible to win. Yi Xingcai said doubtfully, I never knew that Augustine had such a thing. It doesn't seem to be a creature that should be in our surface races. That's right. This thing should have come from the abyss of the endless sea of stars. It is a kind of top-level demon. As for how Augustine got his hands on it, I don't know. Luckily, Augustine only fought with Lin Jun. Otherwise, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to hold on to my second place. Xiongjing didn't speak anymore. Although he didn't believe that Lin Jun could turn the tables, he still hoped that Lin Jun could do something. At least, he could let him see where the weakness of the undying demon eye was. On the side of the endless races, the Hall of the Exalted Experts were also very afraid of Augustine's battle tactics. Edward said, This undying demon eye is too terrifying. Why do I feel that this thing should be something that only gods can have? Augustine has it. I am no match for him at all. If we meet in the Skyfire War in the future, it will be really troublesome. Skypeck also took a deep breath. Unless my star power is stronger and I can kill Augustine with thunderous means, I will definitely lose in a prolonged battle. It is unrealistic to kill Augustine in a short time. This old guy is not for nothing. Otherwise, how could he compete with Lord Heavenly Sin in Skyfire City for tens of millions of years? It seems that on our side, only Lord Heavenly Sin and Lord Dong Xuahan can firmly suppress Augustine. Lord Heavenly Sin, do you know this undying demon eye? Heavenly Sin laughed. It looks familiar, but I can't remember where I have seen it. Our Lord Dong Xuahan is experienced and knowledgeable. She must know where this thing came from. Several people turned their eyes to Dong Xuahan, waiting for her to speak. Dong Xuahan lowered her head. After a long while, she said, I am not too sure, but I believe that the final outcome of the battle depends on one's own strength, not these unorthodox methods. Heavenly Sin laughed. So, in your opinion, Lin Jun still has a chance to turn the tables? Heavenly Sin's tone stunned the others. Why did they feel that Lord Heavenly Sin was not very respectful to Lord Dong Xuahan? Dong Xuahan turned her head. Under the shadow of the cloak, her eyes were as cold as knives. Yes, I think so. Haha, good. Lord Dong Xuahan is really straightforward, but I think Lin Jun has no chance. Then let's wait and see. The two of them stopped talking, and the atmosphere became cold all of a sudden. The rest of the people also stopped talking and focused on watching the situation on the field. The undying demon I continued to devour and absorb. Lin Jun's star power had dropped to 3.5 billion. This level of star power was not enough to fight against Augustine. Lin Jun began to be suppressed. Augustine also clearly felt that Lin Jun's strength was getting weaker and weaker. His attacks became faster and faster. He wanted to end the battle quickly. Taste my sunset slash. Heavenly fire sunset. A red cloud rose into the sky, and Augustine's long saber slashed down violently. Lin Jun, who had been desperately fighting against Augustine, chose to dodge this time. The 7th level of Shadowless Steps showed its power again. Pulling out a string of afterimages, he narrowly avoided the saber. The thundercloud carried Lin Jun's body and rose into the sky. Lin Jun once again went straight for the undying demon eye. Augustine could not help but laugh as he watched Lin Jun rise into the air. Idiot, I've already told you that the undying demon I can't hurt you, but you didn't believe me. That's good, this angle is better. Let me give you the final blow and send you off the stage. Augustine began to gather star power and was about to launch his strongest attack. Lin Jun completely ignored Augustine's accumulation of star power and instantly arrived in front of the undying demon eye. The eye was like the abyss of hell. It had a demonic nature that could devour everything. If one soul was weak, just looking at it would cause their soul to collapse. But Lin Jun was not afraid. He was a black hole beast that could devour everything. How could he be afraid of the demon eye? It was too late to transform into a black hole beast. Lin Jun waved his hand, and a massive energy began to gather in his palm. No matter where you come from, no matter how great your background is, since you dare to appear in front of me, you must be prepared to be destroyed. Go to hell. Taste this. A mass of white gas quickly gathered in the air and condensed on Lin Jun's fist. He punched hard on the undying demon eye. The temperature in the air dropped rapidly, especially the area where the undying demon eye was located. It was completely frozen. What? Augustine, who was about to attack, was stunned. He never expected that the seemingly omnipotent, undying demon eye would be frozen by Lin Jun. How is this possible? What kind of temperature can freeze the undying demon eye? Could it be that the temperature has reached absolute zero? More than one person below the ring thought so. At this moment, almost everyone thought of absolute zero. But no one knew why Lin Jun could master absolute zero. Since suspicious eyes fell on Dong Xuahan. Last evening, after Lin Jun caught the snowflake left by Snow White, he was shocked to find that the temperature of the snowflake had reached absolute zero. Absolute zero referred to minus 273. 15 degrees Celsius. Under this temperature, all cell molecular movements would be frozen and would no longer have any activity. In Lin Jun's inner world, there was a snow lotus at the extreme point of the dark star. The lotus was twin, half of it was light and the other half was cold. Lin Jun's understanding of the light element had almost reached the extreme. He was not lacking in speed, but his understanding of cold was still lacking. At present, the lowest temperature that Lin Jun could master was minus 250 degrees. This temperature was not of much help in a battle at the Hall of the Fame level. Because everyone's cell activity had reached super high strength, ordinary low temperatures would not have any impact at all. But absolute zero was different. If he could use the absolute zero force field on a large scale, Lin Jun would be almost invincible. Even if it was a small area, it would be enough to change the situation of a battle. Gently closing his palm, the snowflake disappeared and entered Lin Jun's inner world, attaching itself to the snow lotus. Shwa, thank you for letting me master a little of the power of absolute zero. Although it's only a small area, it's enough. In the face of the extreme cold that froze all cell activity, the undying demon, I finally lost all its power and turned into a complete ice sculpture. Cut. Lin Jun struck out with his sword, and the undying demon eye shattered with a bang, turning into ice shards that filled the sky. A ball of flame was then released, and the ice shards completely turned into steam and dissipated. Lin Jun, how dare you? Augustine roared and attacked Lin Jun from behind. The undying demon eye was destroyed by Lin Jun, which made him completely flustered. He even forgot that he was in the dimensional universe and wanted to fight Lin Jun to the death. Lin Jun turned around in the air, his long hair fluttering and condensed ice crystals with one hand again. Augustine, it's over. White gas whistled past, and Augustine rushed in front of Lin Jun, but turned into an ice sculpture. Lin Jun finally got the chance. His body turned into a black hole beast, and he opened his mouth that could swallow the world. The galaxy spiraled and sucked Augustine into the black hole. Chapter 1000. Below the arena, Heavenly Sin's face was so ugly that it looked as if his mother had died. It was not his idea to snipe Lin Jun, but the Zhu Tian Great Emperor's. After Heavenly Sin left Dong Shuahan's place yesterday, he immediately reported the situation here to his brother, the Zhu Tian. Heavenly Sin suspected that Snow White and Lin Jun might have some secrets, especially since the two of them had spent a night together after getting drunk. Although the Zhu Tian did not say anything, Heavenly Sin knew that the Zhu Tian was very angry. Otherwise, the Zhu Tian would not have sent his pet, the Undying Demon Eye, to Skyfire City through the Divine Realm teleportation. The Divine Realm teleportation was a consummate skill that could only be used between gods. The Zhu Tian had sent the Undying Demon Eye to the Venerable Yuan Sheng, and the Venerable Yuan Sheng had given it to Heavenly Sin in order to snipe Lin Jun in the arena and prevent him from entering the top 3. After all, there's still a big difference between the top 4 and the top 3. The Zhu Tian had also expressed his anger through this attitude. However, Heavenly Sin had never expected that Lin Jun actually had a trump card, the Absolute Zero. He had investigated Lin Jun's information and had never known that Lin Jun had such a trump card. This completely disrupted his wishful thinking. Augustine had failed to snipe Lin Jun. The Zhu Tian would be very angry when he heard the news. Heavenly Sin let out a heavy sigh. Man proposes, God disposes. Who would have known that Lin Jun had concealed himself so deeply? When he looked at Dong Shuahan, who was beside him, another thought came to Heavenly Sin's mind. Absolute Zero. This seemed to be Dong Shuahan's consummate skill. Was there any connection between the two? When he thought of his previous guess, Heavenly Sin felt more and more that this matter was very likely. He must pass this news to the Zhu Tian in time and let the Great Emperor make a decision. After Lin Jun defeated Augustine, he did not watch the rest of the battle. Instead, he went to Augustine's side. It's time to release my son. Augustine's face was deathly pale. He did not expect to lose under such circumstances. Since he had lost, he had to fulfill his promise. No matter how unwilling Augustine was, he had no choice but to pinch his nose and release Lin and came to Lin Jun's side. When he saw Lin Jun, he was so emotional that his eyes were filled with tears. With a plop, he knelt in front of Lin Jun. Father, I'm useless. I was teleported here when I was in the new territories and got separated from my brother. I had to trouble Father to rescue me. Lin Jun raised his hand, allowing Lin to stand up. Do you know where your brother went? Father, when brother and I got separated, he seemed to have fallen in the opposite direction. He should have gone to the endless races. After that, I have no more news about brother. Lin Jun nodded slightly. This was normal. If Lin Ping was in the surface races, he would have known about Lin Jun and contacted him. He should be in the endless races, which was why there was no news for so long. Fortunately, he had finally found Sun. At least half of his worries were gone. As for Lin Ping, he could slowly search for him. Have a good rest. When the battle here is over, I'll bring you back to the surface. Lin nodded and stood behind Lin Jun happily. At this moment, he felt extremely proud. His father was now third in the Surface Race Hall of Fame. What honor! However, Lin was not surprised that Lin Jun could achieve such an achievement. In his heart, his father had always been the strongest and omnipotent. Father, someone seems to be looking at me over there. Who is he? Lin Jun followed Lin En's gaze and saw Dong Shuahan looking over. She is the endless race's #1, Dong Shuahan. She's a very good person. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. After Lin Jun and Augustine's battle ended, it was time to take turns. The remaining 6 people were Dong Shuahan, Xiong Jing, Heavenly Sin, Yixing Tsai, Edward, and Sky Peck. The final battle was very intense. Everyone did not hold back and fought for their own ranking. Among the 6 people, Sky Peck seemed to be the weakest. However, in the actual battle, Sky Peck once again refreshed everyone's understanding. He actually defeated Edward, who had much stronger star power than him, in a head-on battle. Moreover, in the battle against Yi Xing Tsai, who was second in the surface races, Sky Peck went all out. In the end, Yi Xing Tsai relied on her powerful star power to barely win. His victory was a victory of absolute strength. In terms of combat skills, he was still inferior to Sky Peck. One could imagine that if Sky Peck's star power was stronger, Yi Xing Tsai would definitely be no match for him. Even in the battle against Heavenly Sin, Sky Peck fought well. However, in the end, he still lost because he was not as strong as Heavenly Sin. After that, in the battle against Dong Shuahan and Xiong Jing, Sky Peck lost quickly because he was too weak. Then, it was Edward's turn to challenge others. After Edward lost to Sky Peck, he seemed to have lost his confidence. He lost to Yi Xing Tsai in the first battle. Then, he lost to the other experts one after another. Now, the number 3 and 4 of the endless races had appeared. Sky Peck unexpectedly took the 3rd place, while Edward took the 4th place. Sky Peck was the second dark horse in this challenge. He went from the 20th place to the top 3 and left a deep impression on everyone. If not for Lin Jun's sudden emergence, Sky Peck would definitely be the brightest star this time. Then, it was Yi Xing Tsai's turn to challenge Heavenly Sin. This time, Yi Xing Tsai also stumbled all the way. This time, her challenge against Heavenly Sin did not go well. After 10 minutes of hard fighting, she still lost to him. Moreover, Heavenly Sin did not seem to use his full strength. Then, she challenged Xiong Jing and Dong Shuahan. Without any suspense, she lost one after another. Yi Xing Tsai took the 2nd place of the ground race. Then, it was Heavenly Sin's turn to challenge Xiong Jing. This battle was very intense. Heavenly Sin only lost to Dong Shuahan in the Hall of the Exalted. Although Xiong Jing was the #1 of the ground race, people still suspected that he was not Heavenly Sin's match. This could be said to be Xiong Jing's battle to prove his name. His son of Heaven's swordsmanship was invincible. He completely defeated Heavenly Sin within 5 minutes. Although it was very difficult, it was enough to shatter people's doubts. Heavenly Sin still maintained the 2nd place of the endless races. His ranking did not move up or down. The last battle was a face-to-face battle between the aces of both sides. Xiong Jing challenged Dong Shuahan. After defeating Heavenly Sin, Xiong Jing's strength was recognized. He was now qualified to challenge Dong Shuahan. This battle was not as easy as the previous one. Xiong Jing went up and fought with Dong Shuahan for an hour. Xiong Jing displayed all that he had learned. The last few moves of his were sharp sword techniques. At one point, even Dong Shuahan was a little flustered. However, Xiong Jing was still lacking in terms of strength. At the last moment, Dong Shuahan's absolute zero was successful again. She froze Xiong Jing's legs on the arena. Xiong Jing, who had lost his ability to move, finally could not resist and was eliminated by Dong Shuahan. After defeating Xiong Jing, Dong Shuahan achieved an unprecedented feat, which was to win 3 consecutive Challenger League championships. This was something that had never happened in the countless years of the 2 races. Dong Shuahan did it. At this point, no one doubted Dong Shuahan's strength. She was definitely the #1 person below the gods. The Hall of the Exalted challenge ended. The endless races obtained the final victory. However, people did not leave because there was still an important matter that was about to happen. According to the rules, the winning side would announce the time and scale of the Heavenly Flame War. The endless races won again. In a while, Snow White would appear and announce the news of the Heavenly Flame War. The reason why Lin Jun had been waiting here was for this piece of news. However, Snow White did not appear for a long time. Just as people were getting impatient, someone finally appeared. A huge water mirror appeared on the rostrum. In the space of the water mirror, a black hall appeared. At the end of the hall was a huge throne. Beside the throne, flames rose and space collapsed. It looked like the depths of hell, adding to the majesty of the throne. On the throne, a person wearing a metal mask and a black and red robe sat there. His tall body was like a god. Sitting there, this person was like the peak of the universe. When the people of the endless races saw this figure, they immediately bowed together. Greetings to the Ju Tian Emperor. The people of the surface races looked at the Ju Tian with respect, fear, and disgust in their hearts. This was the biggest source of disaster for the surface races. The great demon king of the endless races, the Ju Tian. The camera panned slowly, and the Ju Tian's voice sounded. The endless races have won the Hall of Fame challenge again. As everyone knows, after the challenge, the date of the Heavenly Flame War will be determined. This time, I will announce the news of the Heavenly Flame War. The voice seemed to flow from the clouds and fell clearly into everyone's ears. In the past, after the Heavenly Flame War, after the two sides finished killing each other, the benefits would be distributed in the mining area near Heavenly Flame City. The winners would get more, and the losers would get less. However, I'm tired of this endless war. I want to solve the problem once and for all. Hearing this, all the people of the surface races felt that something was wrong. Sure enough, the next sentence of the Ju Tian Emperor made everyone feel as if they had fallen into an ice cave. I will now give everyone 50 years to gather. Anyone below the level of a god can participate in the Heavenly Flame War. 50 years later, the Heavenly Flame War will begin, and all the people of the surface races will be chased out of Heavenly Flame City. Beside the water mirror, the Fuguang City Lord Han Xian was shocked. He turned to the water mirror and said, Ju Tian Emperor, you want to chase all of us out of Heavenly Flame City? Chapter 1001. After the Ju Tian announced his decision, the challenge finally came to an end. Despair shrouded the people of the surface races. Anyone below the level of God could participate. Was it going to be an all-out war? One could imagine that after the Heavenly Fire War began, it would be an earth-shattering war. By then, the surface races and the endless races would fight to the death. If the surface races lost, then the cities of the surface races in the endless battlefield would be invaded and occupied. The surface races would have no choice but to retreat to the surface. By then, the endless races would attack the surface races. This concerned everyone's interests and safety, so they couldn't help but worry. Some city lords and people with status began to call for the surface races to prepare for the war. When the Heavenly Fire War began, they would rush to Heavenly Fire City and fight the endless races to the death. Although it was still 50 years, it was just a blink of an eye. Some people who were far away might not even be able to make it here in time. The dark clouds of war had begun to envelop them. Lin Jun looked at the opposite side. People had begun to leave. After Dong Xiuhan glanced over, she also disappeared. Lin Jun brought Lin and along to say goodbye to the people he knew. Now, Lin Jun's identity was completely different. He was ranked third in the Hall of the Exalted. During the Heavenly Fire War, Lin Jun would definitely be the main force. Some people who didn't know him before also came over to say goodbye to Lin Jun. Lin Jun, work hard. When the Heavenly Fire War begins, we'll fight side by side. Xiong Jing came to Lin Jun's side and took the initiative to speak to Lin Jun. Don't worry. Since I've entered the Hall of the Exalted, I'll do my part. Yixing Tsai, Crane Shadow, Anlua Qi, Giant Dragon King, Dark Phoenix, and Sky Swordsman all came over to say goodbye to Lin Jun. Anyone with eyes could see that Lin Jun's future was definitely limitless. If they had a good relationship with him now, it would be easier to meet him in the future. Among the top 10, only Augustine stayed far away from Lin Jun, as if he would never come into contact with him. Of course, Lin Jun didn't care about what Bai Yunyan thought. After greeting these people and adding each other as friends, he bid farewell to Bai Yunyan. Brother, aren't you going to stay in Skyfire City? 50 years will pass in the blink of an eye. Bai Yunyan asked. No, I still have to return to the surface of the primordial realm. The journey back and forth might take 20 to 30 years, so I can't delay here. But within 50 years, I will definitely rush back. That's good. I heard that the Dimensional Universe Corporation has already started to connect the surface and the dimensional universe of the endless battlefield. The news of the Heavenly Fire War will definitely be transmitted back to the surface of the primordial realm. When the time comes, the people on the surface will be able to participate in the war. Lin Jun thought for a moment. The people on the ground aren't strong enough to participate in the Skyfire War, right? In Lin Jun's memories, the 3 flower stage martial artists on the surface were all masters. Nearly all divine transformation martial artists had come to the endless battlefield. If those 3 flower stage martial artists came here, what other use would they have besides being cannon fodder? Brother, you don't know. There's so many masters above the divine transformation realm. So how could all of them be on the endless battlefield? There are still a considerable number of masters hidden on the surface, but they don't care about worldly affairs. But in this Skyfire War, they won't be able to hide. If they fail here, then staying on the surface will only lead to death sooner or later. Only if you can become a god will you be able to transcend all of this. Lin Jun thought about it and found it reasonable. For instance, Starfall Lake Holy Land's 5th senior apprentice, Brother Jean Nua. Lin Jun didn't know just how strong he was, but now that he thought about it, 5th senior apprentice Brother Jean Nua might have already become a god. If there were gods, then it was normal for there to be divine transformation and demigod masters hidden on the surface. If you weren't at that realm, then you wouldn't know about that realm. After all, Lin Jun was still very weak at that time. After bidding farewell to everyone, Lin Jun prepared to leave the dimensional universe and step on the road home. It had been almost 20 years since he left. His family should be waiting for him. Just as Lin Jun was about to leave, someone suddenly called out to him. Lin Jun, wait a moment. Lin Jun turned around and was shocked when he saw the person behind him, because the person who called out to him was actually Sky Square City's Old Man Kanjing. Old Man Kanjing wasn't an ordinary martial artist. He was a god. Although Lin Jun didn't know his rank, there was an almost insurmountable natural gap between a god and a martial artist. Even if Dong Shuahan was the #1 in the Hall of Fame of the 2 major races with a star force close to 9 billion, she still couldn't compare to the weakest lesser god. This was because the minimum star force requirement to become a god was 10 billion. Therefore, any god was high and mighty to a martial artist. Moreover, Lin Jun had a property in Sky Square City, so he naturally had to be more respectful to Old Man Kanjing. He hurriedly bowed and said, "Greetings, Senior Kanjing. May I know why Senior stopped me?" Old Man Kanjing chuckled and waved his hand. "I'm not looking for you, but a friend of mine is looking for you. Come with me." Currently, Lin was also in the dimensional universe. Lin Jun thought for a while and said to Lin, "Leave the dimensional universe now and come to Triple X residence to find me. After arriving here, we'll leave together." "Yes, father." Lin looked at his father with admiration. He really didn't know when he could reach his father's height. He could actually talk to God directly. This made him very proud. Lin left the dimensional universe while Lin Jun followed Old Man Kanjing to the rostrum. Almost everyone on the rostrum had left. Only a person with a blue mask was sitting there. It was unknown what he was doing. Lelo, I've brought your little brother here. My mission is considered complete." The man named Lelo nodded. "Thank you for your hard work, old man. It's just a small matter. Okay, I have to go. Have a good chat with your little brother. I'm very optimistic about this guy's potential. If he's trained well, he'll definitely shine during the Skyfire War." After saying that, Kanjing waved his hand at Lin Jun. "Young man, your business in Skyfire City is very good and very profitable. Don't worry, no one will cause trouble for you in the future. Thank you for your care, Senior Kanjing." Kanjing didn't say anything else. His figure disappeared from the dimensional universe and returned to the real world. Lin Jun then looked at the man named Lelo. Lelo took off his blue mask, revealing a square face. Lin Jun, don't you know who I am? Lin Jun was stunned for a moment. Then his eyes revealed surprise. Your third senior brother. He, at least you have a good eye. That's right, I'm your third senior brother, but I don't recognize this title if ordinary people call me that. Only you're qualified. Lin Jun was also overjoyed. Lelo was actually not an outsider. He was the third guard of the Fallen Star, Lake's Sacred Land, and Jean Nua's senior brother. However, Lelo had left the Fallen Star Lake's Sacred Land for many years. Lin Jun didn't expect him to have become a god now. Lin Jun greets third senior brother. You're welcome. Come and sit. If I'm not wrong, Jean Nua must have told you to be the guard of the Sacred Land in the future. Lin Jun sat beside Lelo and smiled. Fifth senior brother did say that, but it can't become a reality for the time being. What kind of strength does one need to be the guard of the Sacred Land? You don't have to belittle yourself. I think you might be able to do it soon. Do you know why I'm looking for you today? Third senior brother, please tell me. Lin Jun, your current situation is not very good. If there are no accidents, the day of the Heavenly Fire War may be the day of your death. Hearing Lelo's words, Lin Jun was also surprised. Third senior brother, please explain in detail. It's very simple. Others don't know the origin of Augustine's immortal demon eye, but I know. It's the pet of the Emperor clan's King Ju Tian, but it actually appeared in Augustine's hands. What does this mean? Lin Jun suddenly reacted. It means that the Ju Tian is going to attack me. You guessed it right. I also analyzed it like that, but I can't figure it out. The Ju Tian is billions of light years away. Why would they want to attack you? Although you're in the top 3 of the Hall of Fame, it's not worth the Ju Tian to do this. Can you give me an answer? Lin Jun suddenly hesitated. Of course, he knew the answer, but he didn't expect the Ju Tian to be aware of it so quickly. It seemed that someone in Skyfire City must have tipped him off, and Snow White's situation was not good. But this answer couldn't be told to Lelo for the time being, and there was no way to tell him. Fortunately, Lelo didn't ask too much. If it's not easy to say, then don't say it. But you know, the Ju Tian personally gave Augustine his pet, and he failed to deal with you. This is a loss of face for the Ju Tian. In addition, you may have some hatred, so during the Heavenly Fire War, the Ju Tian will definitely attack you. Lin Jun thought for a moment. Isn't the Heavenly Fire War prohibited from participating in the Heavenly Fire War? Will he personally attack me? Oh, you underestimate the power of the Emperor of the Endless Races. When the time comes, he will definitely have a way to deal with you. It's just that I'm not him, so I can't give you an accurate answer now. Lelo said, and solemnly reminded Lin Jun. So the only thing you have to do now is to improve your strength. Third senior brother, don't worry. I will work hard to practice. When the Heavenly Fire War comes, I will definitely be able to reach the Godstone stage. Lin Jun was very confident. As long as he reached the Godstone stage, Lin Jun was even confident that he could compete with a top master like Snow White. Unexpectedly, Lelo waved his hand. No, of course I know you can reach the Godstone stage, but that's not enough. I came this time to tell you that before you reach the Godstone stage, you have a more important thing to do. What is it? Cultivate the Divine Realm. Divine Realm. Chapter 1002. After listening to Lelo, Lin Jun seemed to have understood something. Does the realm of God that third senior brother mentioned refer to the evolution of the warrior's own realm? Lelo nodded slightly. Yes, every warrior has their own unique realm force field, but the power of the realm force is very limited. It will be broken when you encounter an opponent with stronger star power than you. Moreover, it is extremely complicated and difficult to cultivate, so the warrior's realm force field is often not very successful. This point of view can't be considered wrong, but there is a little-known secret about the realm force field. Lelo looked around. There are not many people in the arena now, and there was no one on the rostrum. Then, he whispered to Lin Jun, the realm of God is different from ordinary realms. When the realm force field is activated, it can increase star power. Increase star power? Lin Jun's eyes suddenly lit up. It would be great if he could increase his star power. His star power was still somewhat insufficient. At the very least, if he did not advance to divine stone, he would not be invincible in the future heavenly fire war. Yes, and the realm of God is not so easy to break. Compared to the realm of an ordinary warrior, the opponent's star power is not twice as strong as yours. They cannot break your realm force. This is the tenacity of the realm of God. Hearing this, Lin Jun was even more excited. If the opponent's star power was not more than twice as strong, then almost no one below God could break his realm force head-on. What level was your previous warrior realm force field? My realm force field is called Star River Force Field, and it has been cultivated to level 3. Cultivate again. Integrate what you are best at into the realm force field. The realm force field is not only to increase star power, but also has many other functions. For example, after Lelo finished speaking, the realm force field was activated instantly. The pressure of star power fell from the sky like the collapse of the sky, and the surrounding lightning surged. The surging power of thunder and lightning filled the entire arena. Lin Jun couldn't see anything around him. It was as if he was in the middle of a thunderstorm. Lin Jun himself had mastered the power of thunder and lightning, and he even had 3 advanced annihilation thunder. But in this place, Lin Jun felt that the power of thunder and lightning everywhere was not inferior to his annihilation thunder. This was absolutely a terrifying thing. One could imagine that if he had such a lightning domain, then there would be no need to fight at all. Once the domain was activated, he would be able to easily win the championship. Even top experts like Dong Xuahan and Xiong Jing could not stop him. This is the God's domain. That's right, this is my God's domain, level 8. It can increase my astral power level by 70%, and it also has endless lightning attacks. Do you think it's important? Lin Jun's eyes flashed. Needless to say, he was definitely going to learn about domains. Learning domains are divided into 10 levels. Every level can increase your astral power level by up to 10%. Lin Jun, if you can master 3% of your domain, it will be of great help to you in the Heavenly Fire War. Third Senior Brother's domain is already level 8. Doesn't that increase by 80%? No, I didn't achieve a 10% increase in every level of my domain. It's not easy to increase by 10%. I only increased it by 10% in the first and second levels. The other 2 levels only increased it by 9%, and the 5th and 6th levels only increased it by 8%. It's very difficult. It gets more difficult as I go. Now that I'm at level 8, I'll be lucky if I can increase it by 7%. Lin Jun suddenly understood. It turned out that the power of a domain also required a good foundation. Just like his own perfect breakthrough, he had to be perfect at the beginning to have the possibility of perfection at the end. However, it got more difficult as he progressed. Raylo was the 3rd Senior Brother of the fallen star, Lake Holy Land. His talent could be imagined. The difficulty of the later levels decreased as he progressed. Is the speed of improvement of this domain fast? If I can master a level 6 or 7 domain during the Heavenly Fire War, it will be of great help to me in battle. I've cultivated this domain for tens of millions of years before I reach level 8. It's impossible for you to reach level 6 or 7 in a short time. Raylo obviously didn't think that Lin Jun could improve his domain power too much in 50 years. Saying level 3 was already giving Lin Jun a lot of face. Of course, Lin Jun didn't care about this. He immediately began to consult Raylo about the domain. There are many types of domains, such as the elemental domain, the gravity domain, the bloodthirsty domain, the space domain, the time domain, and so on. The focus of the domain cultivation method is to comprehend and master the true meaning of the laws. Talent and opportunity are indispensable. Of course, the most important thing is diligence. It takes time to accumulate, and many little drops make a mickle. Moreover, the cultivation of the domain is more important than the cultivation of the mind. You have to walk the path of cultivation again. Hearing this, Lin Jun was a little puzzled. How do I walk the path of cultivation again? This is both simple and difficult. The God's domain has to be cultivated from the beginning. The so-called from the beginning refers to the time when you first started practicing martial arts. According to the characteristics of the cultivation at that time, you have to cultivate the domain from the beginning. Only then can it have a gradual effect. To be more specific, the domain is divided into 9 levels. The first is the war god domain, which refers to the process of a martial artist from a warrior, a warlord, and a warlord to a warlord. You have to master it with the mentality and strength at that time to successfully comprehend it. Lin Jun raised a question. I can understand the mentality, but what about the strength? It's very simple. Suppress your current strength and control it to not exceed the level of a warlord. Then cultivate it again, and you'll get twice the result with half the effort. Lin Jun nodded slightly. This was definitely not a simple process. Therefore, the first level of the domain is called the war god domain. The second level of the domain is called the star domain. It refers to the process of the 6 realms of the star core: meteor, comet, satellite, planet, and star after a martial artist enters the star realm. The third level of the domain is called the black hole domain. This is a separate boundary that refers to the time when a martial artist is in the black hole realm. The fourth level is called the world king domain. It refers to the time when martial artist is in the black hole realm, the galaxy realm, star domain realm, and star boundary realm. The fifth level is called the longevity domain. This is also a separate boundary. It is a domain that a martial artist enters after breaking into the world king realm and becoming immortal. The sixth level is called the 3-flower domain. This is also a separate boundary. It refers to the 3 flowering stages. This is because at this time, a martial artist's essence, energy, and divine flowers will condense and their potential will begin to display. This is also very important. The 7th level is called the divine transformation domain. This process is divided into 3 stages: divine sense, divine world, and divine stone. At this stage, there is something you must pay attention to. That is, you cannot become a demigod. This is because there is no demigod boundary between the 7th and 8th levels. If you become a demigod, then even if you meet the conditions to cultivate the god domain, even if you become a divinity, it is impossible for you to reach the 8th level. Only a peak divine stone powerhouse can continue to cultivate the 8th level domain. Lin Jun nodded. He had never thought of becoming a demigod. Reino continued. At the 8th level, that is the true god domain. This stage is divided into 3 stages: lower god, middle god, and upper god. At this time, it is impossible for you to comprehend it unless you become a divinity. Thus, Lin Jun, your current limit is to cultivate the 7th level. I haven't completed my breakthrough at this stage. It's not that I can't break through, but that my improvement hasn't reached 8% yet. You should know that a difference of 1% is a difference of a great deal of star force, so I can't rashly break through. Lin Jun suddenly asked, what about the 9th level? Don't even think about the 9th level. That is called the ruler domain. It is something that only the top people in the entire universe can cultivate. I don't even dare to think about it. You might have a chance, but I'm afraid it will be impossible in the near future. Hearing this, Lin Jun nodded. He had a rough idea of how to cultivate the entire domain. Remember, adjust your mentality and treat yourself as the most ordinary warrior. It will actually help you cultivate the domain. Lin Jun expressed his gratitude to Reino and then asked a question. The power of the domain is so magical. Don't other people cultivate it? Generally, only gods can cultivate the power of the domain. Very few people can cultivate it because their basic conditions are not enough. For example, the divine power of destiny and the condensation of the divine realm. Is this something that ordinary people can do? Lin Jun thought about it. There should be a few people who can do it. You're right, but the number of people is too small. As far as I know, in the Hall of the Exalted, only Dong Xuahan has cultivated the domain. However, no one can pose a real threat to her in this challenge. She has never used her domain. Xiong Jing seems to have just dabbled in it. Heavenly Sin wants to cultivate the domain, but because the degree of condensation of the divine realm is not enough, it has been delayed for many years. I don't know if he still has the chance to cultivate it. As for the others, None of them are qualified. The reason why I found you this time to tell you this is that you are qualified. The second reason is that the heavenly fire war is about to start. Gods can't participate in the war. Increasing your strength is also increasing the strength of the races on the ground. Speaking of this, Reno said, "It is estimated that someone from the endless races will find some masters to teach them the cultivation method of the divine realm. For example, this year's Tianji, Mo Luo, and the others are all warriors with great potential. Maybe they will have the opportunity to cultivate it. These are all your enemies. You can't lose to them." Third senior brother, don't worry. Lin Jun will work hard. That's good. I also know that you must be very hard-working in your cultivation. That's it. Go back and cultivate well. Then you must rush back to Heavenly Fire City to participate in the Heavenly Fire War within 50 years. After Reno finished speaking, he stood up and patted Lin Jun on the shoulder. "Say hello to Jean Nua for me." After saying that, Reno's figure blurred and disappeared from the arena. Lin Jun engraved everything Reno had told him in his heart to ensure that he would not forget it. Then he turned around. The surrounding area was empty. It was time for him to leave. Glancing at the endless races, Lin Jun was slightly disappointed when he did not see the beautiful figure in the white cloak. "I hope nothing happens to her. We'll meet again during the Heavenly Fire War." With a thought, Lin Jun left the dimensional universe and was ready to embark on the road home.